Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga. Chapter 2092. Slain in one hit. As Xueqi stepped forward and his calm voice reached the players around him, the experts watching from a distance and the spectating crowd stared with dropped jaws. Even Starlink's sneering ranger froze in shock as Xueqi incredulously approached. Is Black Flame tired of living? The four superpowers have only avoided Zero Wing thus far out of respect for Nature Hall and Unyielding Soul. Why would he dare take the initiative to attack them? Has he just given up? None of the major powers experts or upper echelons could understand why Xueqi was being so stubborn. The auction arena had just begun, so there would be plenty of opportunities to secure energy crystals later. Even if the four superpowers wanted to monopolize the crystals, they didn't have the manpower to cover every corner of the 5 battlefields. Furthermore, Zero Wing's strength was only second to the four superpowers in this auction arena. It definitely had a chance of claiming the energy crystals that the four superpowers couldn't secure. Zero Wing didn't actually need to fight these superpowers. While the crowd chatted about the situation among themselves, the purple-clad woman's expression darkened. Black Flame. Do you really think that we are too afraid to attack just because you have Nature Hall and Unyielding Soul support? The woman from King's Return demanded frostily. With her wrath, the surrounding space froze. Her aura was no less intense than Tengu's. The ambient mana rampaged in tandem with the woman's anger. The players within this violent mana storm began to lose their temper as well. The various major powers experts gasped as they felt the sudden change. Even Melody, who experienced the altered environment from her spectator room, paled. How is she so powerful? A simple mood change has affected the surrounding mana so drastically. Melody watched the purple-clad beauty with a grim expression. As a half-elf, she had a very high affinity with elemental mana. Even so, she couldn't easily trigger mana without casting a spell, yet this purple-clad woman could. While this feat might not seem impressive, Melody recognized how frightening it truly was and what it represented as a magical class expert. When casting a spell, a player uses incantations and runes to trigger the ambient mana and gather it to a single point. Only then could a caster use the gathered mana to form the necessary magic arrays. If one could command the mana around them without incantations or runes, they could cast a spell in a fraction of the normally required time. In God's domain, magical class players' glaring weaknesses were their casting times and mana capacity. If a magical class player could reduce their casting time, they could substantially increase their combat power, especially against other players. This was especially true when it came to combat against players. This is only natural. She is, after all, King's Return's favored prodigy, Wilting Netherworld. She has also earned the nickname Lightning Witch. Purely comparing battle records, she's even more impressive than the Warring Ghost. If not for King's Return hadn't come to an agreement with the Secret Pavilion, Wilting Netherworld would have long since ranked among the top 50 players on the God's Domain experts list. Evil Judgment said as he watched the purple-clad woman in fascination. Now that Black Flame has angered Wilting Netherworld, she and Tengu are more than enough to disqualify every Zero Wing member on Battlefield No. 1. Very few people knew of Wilting Netherworld's battle records. Most likely, only the various superpowers knew about her. Furthermore, Wilting Netherworld's activities were usually only related to the various superpowers. First-rate guilds experts had no chance of encountering her. Evil Judgment had witnessed Wilting Netherworld's fearsome power personally. A total of 8 superpowers had gathered to contest for a mysterious legacy. Setting Sun had been one of them. To win the mysterious legacy, the various superpowers had dispatched quite a few old monsters, but during the battle, an unknown woman had pinned down one of Setting Sun's old monsters by herself, which had ultimately enabled King's Return to claim the legacy. Superpowers' old monsters had risen to fame at least a decade ago, with some maintaining their fame for several decades. They were all experts with rich combat experience, and their combat standards far exceeded human limits. However, Wilting Netherworld, a girl even younger than Evil Judgment, had successfully pinned one of these old monsters down without any help. Moreover, she had stopped Evil Judgment, who had fought alongside his guild's old monsters for some time. While doing so, her strength was absurd. Evil Judgment was sure that she would have killed him in 3 or 4 attacks if that old monster from his guild hadn't demanded most of Wilting Netherworld's attention during that fight. Meanwhile, the 4 superpowers experts around the energy crystal turned to watch Xueqi. Everyone knew of Black Flame's reputation for being stubborn. Otherwise, the man wouldn't have provoked so many superpowers. But they had never thought that he'd dare to show such arrogance before 4 cooperating superpowers. Brother Mu, Vice Guild Leader Thunder, you cannot blame us for our lack of respect toward you. This kid simply doesn't know what's good for him. If we don't teach him a lesson, I'm afraid that he'll cause even more trouble for your 2 guilds in the future, Blind Man said as he turned to Mu Chang and Deep Thunder. Ha! Do whatever you want. Mu Chang watched Shifeng with disappointment, thinking the boy was too stubborn and beyond salvation. Only he and Deep Thunder were in this location, but against the combined might of 4 superpowers, they wouldn't accomplish anything even if they had their guild's main force members. None of the 4 superpowers were any weaker than Unyielding Soul or Nature Hall. Hence, neither he nor Deep Thunder had the strength to break these 4 superpowers' rules. Wait! Deep Thunder shouted suddenly. This is Zero Wing's home turf. Isn't it a little much to shove the guild out of this contest? Furthermore, Zero Wing is one of Nature Hall's firm allies. Nature Hall can't just sit by and watch you bully Zero Wing. Deep Thunder's abrupt attitude change stunned the various superpowers members. They couldn't fathom what trick he was trying to pull. Since when were Zero Wing and Nature Hall firm allies? To add to their confusion, Deep Thunder seemed intent on fighting alongside Zero Wing. The situation even confused Mu Cheng. He hadn't expected Deep Thunder to be so committed to helping Zero Wing. Vice Guild Leader Thunder is so affectionate. Unfortunately, Zero Wing has already enraged Starlink's members. I'm afraid that it's too late to stop them, an old man from Starlink wearing silvery gray leather armor said as he glanced at Tengu, who had already begun to move. With a smile he continued, moreover, rules are rules. If we superpowers don't show off our power, no one will fear or respect us. Everyone nodded in agreement with this old man's sentiments. They all felt that Deep Thunder was being too foolish. Even in such a desperate situation, he still insisted on protecting Zero Wing. Did he really think that their superpowers feared Nature Hall? While the superpowers members expressed their agreement, Tengu arrived before Shifeng, his great sword blazing with fire. With a swing, his 20-meter-long flaming blade descended on Shifeng. Die! The surrounding temperature rose due to the raging flames, and everyone within range felt the increasing gravitational force pulling them toward the ground, making movement difficult. Tier 2 Taboo Skill, Inferno Blade. Even the various superpowers experts wore grim expressions as they watched Tengu's display of power. They hadn't expected the warring ghost to wield such strength after restoring his equipment's ranks. This attack definitely had the strength to rival a Grand Lord's of the same level. Even a peak Tier 2 metric tons would likely struggle to block this attack, much less a Tier 2 swordsman. Without a berserk skill, Shifeng's HP would likely drop to a critical level after a single hit. Just before the flaming blade devoured Shifeng, he unsheathed Killing Ray and swung to intercept the attack. Lightning Slash. An arch of blue lightning flashed, and Tengu's flaming blade dissipated the moment it met the lightning arch. Before Tengu could pull back to defend himself, the lightning had bisected his body, leaving behind a faint, glowing scar around his abdomen. Tengu's HP instantly drained, and the berserker fell, lifeless. Chapter 2093. Imposing Might. This. Impossible. Tengu spun toward Shifeng in shock when he saw his plummeting HP. Inferno Blade was his most powerful skill. Even without a berserker skill, he could use this taboo skill to counter a Grand Lord's attack. With his ability to predict his opponent's movements, even old monsters would have to flee from this attack. However, Shifeng had shattered his Inferno Blade and killed him with the same move. But that wasn't the worst part. Tengu's failure to predict Shifeng's movements truly surprised him. He could even foresee Domain Realm monsters' movements, yet this ability was useless against Shifeng. Although Tengu wanted to warn his companions, his HP had already hit 0, and he lost control of his body. As Tengu collapsed to the ground, the killing intent that had filled the battlefield froze as the 4 superpowers experts stared at Shifeng, silently panicking. It was one thing if Shifeng had killed an ordinary peak expert, but Tengu wasn't an ordinary anything. He was even capable of threatening old monsters. Yet, Shifeng had instant-killed such an expert no matter how they looked at it. This felt like a dream. God's domain certainly had powerful offensive skills that could instant-kill players, and knowing this, every peak expert had equally powerful life-saving skills to avoid such an outcome. Needless to say, An expert like Tengu had amassed a few of these life-saving skills. However, Tengu hadn't had time to activate his life-saving skills before dying. Shifeng's attack had even nullified Tengu's prided Inferno blade before the Warring Ghost had taken the hit. Silence reigned over the crowd outside of the battlefield, their jaws dropping as the implications of Shifeng's attack sunk in. Amazing! He killed a superpowers peak expert in one hit. So that is the Sword King Black Flame. Everyone watching knew the nickname Sword King, but they had only heard about him through rumors. Moreover, God's domain had been developing rapidly, and players' combat standards continued to improve. Black Flame's previous battle records no longer meant much to current players. The players that had come from other kingdoms and empires, in particular, didn't think much of Black Flame's title. At least, it was far less imposing than the position of Zero Wings Guild leader. However, this scene reminded them of how fearsome the Sword King truly was. The Sword King had certainly grown stronger since receiving the title, not weaker. While the spectators discussed the fight, Shifeng sheathed Killing Ray. He then glanced at wilting Netherworld and her companions, asking, "Do you still want to stop me?" Shifeng's voice sounded calm and gentle, yet wilting Netherworld and the other experts felt an immense pressure weigh them down. These experts unconsciously moved out of the way. Seeing that his opponents had lost the will to fight, Shifeng and his teammates continued toward the energy crystal. Wilting Netherworld and her comrades didn't attempt any sneak attacks, merely watching, frustrated, from the sidelines. They merely looked on with frustration from the sidelines. Wilting Netherworld felt particularly bitter. Although she considered stopping Shifeng, the moment she harbored the thought, she felt an indifferent gaze directed toward her, informing her that he was prepared for such an attack. When she met Shifeng's cold gaze, she felt as if the man were telling her, "You can try it, but you'll only fall next to Tengu." With this realization, wilting Netherworld abandoned any thoughts of resisting. Her strength was, at best, a match for Tengu's. Even though Shifeng had already used his sure kill skill, killing her wouldn't be difficult for someone with even higher attributes than Tengu and domain realm combat standards. Is this why he was so confident? When wilting Netherworld thought back to Shifeng's relaxed attitude, she understood that he hadn't acted that way due to nature hall and unyielding soul support. He simply had the strength to back up his confidence. What? They got through just like that? As the various major powers experts watched wilting Netherworld and her comrades let Shifeng's party pass, they were flabbergasted. By killing just one player, Shifeng had silenced the 4 superpowers peak experts, convincing them that it would be wise to let him pass. This was even more shocking than watching someone kill a great lord with one attack. When Melody saw this from her spectator room, however, she was incomparably excited. She had never dreamed that Shifeng would be so powerful. Not only had he killed a monster like Tengu, but wilting Netherworld and her party were also afraid enough that they stepped aside. How? How is this possible? Evil Judgment, on the other hand, was stupefied, confusion and madness flashing in his eyes. Wilting Netherworld, a goddess in his eyes, had retreated from Shifeng. She hadn't even budged during the fight with his guild's old monster, yet a single sentence from Shifeng had been enough to force her aside. Evil Judgment even wondered if the world was playing some cruel joke on him. Back on the battlefield, the 4 superpowers members that were waiting for the descending energy crystal to reach the ground tensed at this unexpected result. How surprising! Even Black Flame has reached this standard. It's no wonder why he dared to participate, Blind Man said as he began to watch Shifeng more seriously. Glancing at Mu Chang and Deep Thunder, he realized why their guilds wanted to befriend Zero Wing. Based on the information King's Return had collected, Shifeng's combat standards were only at the Void Realm, yet he could display combat power that rivaled Domain Realm experts. He mainly relied on his powerful basic attributes and skills to face Domain Realm experts. However, things had changed. Although Shifeng had only executed one attack, his control assured Blind Man that Shifeng had reached the Domain Realm. Every Domain Realm expert warranted the various superpowers' attention, let alone a Domain Realm expert with the support of a large guild. As time passed, this Domain Realm expert would only become more powerful. Any Domain Realm expert intent on causing trouble could give the various superpowers a massive headache. This situation reminded Blind Man of the 4 shadow demons from the past. However, Mu Chang didn't know that Shifeng had reached the Domain Realm. He was actually surprised to see Shifeng display such power. This revelation would certainly affect the competition. Meanwhile, Jing Yang, one of Blackwater's upper echelons, currently wore a dark expression. Brother Jing, Zero Wing is stronger than we expected. We'll likely find it difficult to execute our original plan, Snow Scar whispered to Jing Yang. A domain realm expert wasn't an easy opponent. At the very least, it meant that Zero Wing qualified to compete for the energy crystals in Battlefield No. 1. It's true that Black Flame is stronger than we suspected, but slaying Tengu will cause Zero Wing some trouble, Jing Yang said as he watched Starlink's members approach Xueqi. Smiling, he continued, it seems Starlink can no longer sit still. Of the 5 battlefields in this competition, Battlefield No. 1 was a gathering of monsters. 2 of Starlink's most powerful combatants had been assigned to the battlefield. Wind Demon and Sword Demon of the 4 Shadow Demons. As Jing Yang finished his comment, both Wind Demon and Shadow Demon had reached Xueqi. The 2 elderly men smiled at their opponent as if they were just 2 friendly old men from the neighborhood instead of the combat veterans they truly were. These old men's auras were nothing like Tengu's. Their auras felt like the vast ocean, and everyone felt like small boats waiting to be devoured by the waves as these auras washed over them. Even wilting Netherworld was afraid as she looked at these 2 men. Not only did Wind Demon and Sword Demon carry 4 pieces of epic equipment, but they also wielded epic weapons. The rest of their equipment was level 65 Dark Gold rank. Not even wilting Netherworld's equipment was as impressive as theirs. Little brother, you're quite skilled. You're already so strong despite your age. Your future is boundless. Our guild leader wants to annihilate Zero Wing, but after discussing the situation with Old Wind here, we've decided that if Zero Wing agrees to become one of Starlink's subordinate guilds, we'll talk the guild leader into giving you White River City, the white-haired old man with a slightly bent back addressed Xueqi. Smiling, he asked, may I know what you think of this proposal? Everyone was dumbfounded when they heard the old man's words, especially the various major powers' upper echelons. They all stared at Xueqi in envy. No one had considered that not only would Starlink willingly abandon its vengeance against Zero Wing, but it would also offer to protect the guild. If the smaller guild accepted the offer, Zero Wing's development in God's domain would skyrocket. There's nothing to think about. Scram. Xueqi's response was cold as he eyed Wind Demon and Sword Demon. Chapter 2094. With just you. Sword Demon's expression sunk when he heard Xueqi's reply, his smile vanishing as he gave Zero Wing's swordsman a chilling look. Even space around them frozen due to the bone-piercing killing intent Sword Demon. Wilting Netherworld, who stood nearby, couldn't help but shudder as she felt the change. The experts from the various major powers just stared at Xueqi, gaping in shock. Has Black Flame really lost his mind? Doomed. Zero Wing is doomed for sure. The various major powers didn't know what to say to Xueqi's overbearing behavior. Starlink already suppressed 2 super first-rate guilds in the Dark Knight Empire. It had endless strength and wasn't a force that super first-rate guilds like Unyielding Soul or Nature Hall could compare to. Only top-ranked super first-rate guilds had any hope of standing against it. If Starlink gave the word, countless powers would do what they could to curry its favor and celebrate becoming Starlink's subordinate guild. As one of Starlink's subordinate guilds, not only would the guild receive financial support from the superpower, but it would also receive support in in-game resources. Most importantly, the guild could develop without worrying about enemies. It would have nothing to fear even when clashing with other superpowers. If Zero Wing submitted to Starlink, it could reach an entirely new level of development very quickly. Zero Wing wouldn't be limited to lording over Star Moon Kingdom. It could easily become the overlord in the several neighboring kingdoms as well. Yet, Xueqi had actually rejected such an opportunity, and he had done so without hesitation. Even the various superpowers players were stunned by his answer. Young people nowadays really are ignorant of their limitations, Blind Man said as he shook his head and chuckled. He then turned to Deep Thunder and said, Vice Guild Leader Thunder, although you have a good relationship with Zero Wing, I'd advise you not to interfere. If you attract the 4 Shadow Demons' ire, you'll likely have a hard time explaining yourself to Guild Leader Nature. Not even he would dare to show such arrogance before Sword Demon and Wind Demon. First of all, they had Starlink support. Secondly, both experts were incredibly powerful, far stronger than the younger generation's domain realm experts. Ignoring Starlink, provoking these 2 was not wise. Thank you for your concern, but King's Return doesn't need to worry about that, Deep Thunder replied. Calmly he continued, I've said this already, but Nature Hall and Zero Wing are firm allies. If someone wants to move against Zero Wing, Nature Hall won't sit back and watch. Blind Man gave the younger expert an odd look, but he didn't comment further. The various Superpowers members standing nearby were stunned by Deep Thunder's reply. Even now, Nature Hall insisted on shielding Zero Wing. The guild's choices were completely out of the norm. Deep Thunder's response even surprised Mu Cheng, and he took a moment to consider Xueqi more carefully. He had never thought that Zero Wing was capable of inspiring Nature Hall to go to such great lengths, even willing to provoke Starlink on its behalf. However, despite the strange looks he received from the various Superpowers members, Deep Thunder smiled contentedly. None of these superpowers, excluding Nature Hall, knew what strength Zero Wing hid. These players didn't know that Xueqi wasn't the only powerhouse in Zero Wing. The guild also had Fire Dance, who had the combat power to rival Domain Realm experts. But that wasn't the end of it. Zero Wing also had Cola and the several other peak experts Xueqi had brought with him during his visit to Nature Hall's reception room. According to Nature Hall's initial estimations, Zero Wing should have at least 10 peak experts. Even though Starlink had dispatched a considerable amount of strength to White River City's auction house, its chances of winning this competition weren't overwhelmingly high. Rather, it only had a 50-50 chance. Zero Wing had invested every resource it had in White River City, and every participating Zero Wing player had likely fully restored all of their weapons and equipment, allowing them to fight in peak condition. However, the same couldn't be said for Starlink's members. Only a fraction of Starlink's force had unbound all of their equipment. Even though Starlink had the numerical advantage, Zero Wing's overall combat power was on par with the superpowers. Rather than side with the 4 superpowers and standing to gain insignificant benefits, gambling on Zero Wing and potentially winning the lottery was a wiser move for Nature Hall. Old Sword, it seems this brat doesn't appreciate your goodwill. Wind Demon could not help but chuckle at Sword Demon. There's no need to waste words on them, Elder Sword. Let's just follow the guild leader's orders and eliminate them. A middle-aged man wielding an ancient, crystal bow said as he glared at Xueqi. Sword Demon was the strongest of the 4 shadow demons in melee combat. Even Lu Xinglua, Starlink's guild leader, had to treat him with respect. Sword Demon also had a great appreciation for talented individuals, especially those that used the sword. Of course, the main reason for his appreciation was his desire for strong opponents in the future. To grow stronger, one needed to face stronger combatants, after all. This was also why Sword Demon had suggested recruiting Zero Wing. Otherwise, Sword Demon would have killed Xueqi after watching the swordsman kill Tengu. Little brat, it seems that you think you can ignore us old fellows now that you've reached the Domain Realm. Unfortunately, you are still naive. Since you aren't backed by a superpower, you fail to understand that reaching the Domain Realm is only the first step toward the apex, Sword Demon said as he heaved a deep sigh. His gaze then sharpened as he said, I will teach you that even among Domain Realm experts, there can be a massive difference in strength. Sword Demon's aura abruptly shifted, releasing a tremendous amount of pressure to bear down on Xueqi. Although Sword Demon's aura targeted Xueqi, wilting Netherworld couldn't help but tremble, struggling to breathe, even though she stood some distance behind Xueqi. How is he so strong? Fire Dance, Alluring Summer, Flying Shadow, and Shadow Sword prepared for battle from behind Xueqi. They had never expected this player's aura to be so strong. Before anyone could react, Sword Demon's Crimson Greatsword transformed into a rotating sword light. He then vanished, reappearing before Xueqi in an instant. Like nimble snakes, 12 crimson sword lights spread out and converged on Xueqi, altering their attack trajectories and becoming nearly impossible to predict. Moreover, the attacks were so fast that the naked eye couldn't keep up. Tier 2 skill, 12 heavenly rotations. Sure enough, he's reached this level after so long. Blind Man's expression tensed when he saw the 12 sword lights. Wilting Netherworld, on the other hand, was utterly dumbfounded. Despite her keen perception, she couldn't follow the 12 sword lights' speed and transformations. It looked as if 12 different people commanded the sword lights, like each attack had a will of its own. The 12 sword lights didn't even interfere with each other's trajectories. Although each attack only carried a Great Lord's strength of the same level, She doubted that she'd be able to dodge or block this assault. An ordinary skill like 12 heavenly rotations had gained a life of its own in Sword Demon's hands. His combat standards were unlike anything she had seen from the domain realm experts she had fought before. Alone? I'm afraid you're not qualified. With a snort, Xueqi unsheathed Killing Ray and Twilight Blade, greeting the 12 sword lights in battle. Swords Transmigration. Chapter 2095. So confident with so many fighters. As the 12 crimson sword lights were about to bite into Xueqi, Killing Ray and Twilight Blade cut 6 of them down. The counterattack forcibly altered these sword lights' trajectories, and rather than threatening Xueqi's life, they became shields that protected him as they clashed with the remaining 6 sword lights. Dang, dang, dang. As the 12 sword lights collided, they disintegrated into particles of light. Meanwhile, Xueqi remained unharmed. He blocked all of those attacks? Wilting Netherworld stared at the fading light particles with wide eyes. Sword Demon's use of this skill had reached the peak of God's domain. She was sure that even King's Return's old monsters would be forced to use a life-saving skill or powerful offensive skill to nullify the attack. Yet Xueqi had done so with a few, simple slashes. Moreover, Xueqi had neutralized the attack so effortlessly. Wilting Netherworld couldn't believe her eyes. Similarly, the various major powers watching experts gaped at the scene. Amazing! This is simply amazing! So, this is an Apex expert's strength. Shock and excitement overwhelmed everyone after witnessing the brief clash between Xueqi and Sword Demon. Although they all knew that the various superpowers' old monsters were extraordinarily powerful, they had never seen one in action before. At most, they had watched a few of those old monsters' battle videos. However, they now watched one of these old monsters fight an equally strong opponent. Moreover, they only stood 200 yards away from the fight. 4 Tier 2 players. Watching from this distance was like watching a fight from 50 yards away for Tier 1 players. Black Flame really can't be underestimated. No wonder why he dismissed Sword Demon's offer so quickly. Blind Man was also slightly surprised to see Xueqi unharmed. At Sword Demon's skill level, one could command their skills or spells as if they were subordinates, using them in such a way that they were beyond 100% effective. Ordinary domain realm experts had no hope against Sword Demon. After all, experts that had just reached the domain realm could only use their skills and spells at 100% efficiency. There was a qualitative difference between the two. While everyone discussed Sword Demon and Xueqi's initial exchange, Xueqi moved, appearing before Sword Demon instantly. Killing Ray and Twilight Blade then transformed into countless sword lights as they assaulted the older man. Sword's Orbit. Before Xueqi had reached the domain realm, he had mainly used Sword's Orbit for defense since using the technique offensively had dealt so little damage. He had only been able to execute 6 simultaneous attacks with the technique, but after reaching the domain realm, he could perform Sword's Orbit perfectly. Not only was the technique powerful when used defensively, but it was also quite strong offensively. Sword Demon's expression darkened as the sword lights flew toward him. He couldn't actually perceive the attack trajectories, and he felt as if the entire world pressed down on him. He could also sense that each sword light had enough power to slice apart space itself. Xueqi's attacks were even stronger than a great lord's of the same level. In the blink of an eye, oval 4 sword lights sliced at him from different directions. Break! Sword Demon shouted, and the flames along his great sword transformed into a streak of light as they countered more than half of the incoming attacks. He then left behind multiple afterimages as he dodged the remaining attacks. He elusively thrust his great sword at Xueqi, his attack carrying as much strength as a Grand Lord of the same level. However, Xueqi's Sword Orbit was normally a defensive combat technique. Although Sword Demon's attacks were stronger this time and stronger than Xueqi's, the galaxy of stars that surrounded the younger swordsman deflected every strike. None of Sword Demon's attacks touched Xueqi. For a time, Sword Demon and Xueqi continued to trade attacks, their HPs falling bit by bit. Neither swordsman was able to secure an advantage over the other. Very few of the watching experts nearby could keep up with Sword Demon's elusive attacks and movement techniques. When these experts tried to put themselves in Xueqi's position, they realized that Sword Demon would easily slaughter them. As for Xueqi's combat technique, he was so fast that they couldn't register his movements. They had only realized that he had swung his sword after the fact. When they imagined being on the receiving end of his attacks, they recognized that they wouldn't block a single swing and would be slaughtered helplessly. Amazing! Melody could not believe her eyes as she watched the exchange between Xueqi and Sword Demon, excitement welling within her heart. Even the various superpowers feared Sword Demon, and he currently carried 6 epic weapons and equipment pieces. His equipment standards undoubtedly ranked among the very top in God's domain right now. Yet, Xueqi fought Sword Demon to a standstill. So, this is his true strength? Mu Cheng, who watched the battle from the battlefield, was just as shocked as Xueqi held this play out from the side, Blind Man said calmly. Damned blind man. Mu Cheng inwardly cursed. Watching from the sidelines and staying its hand was the best option for King's return. It wasn't from the Dark Knight Empire, and it had no reason to clash with Starlink. However, King's return would prefer to watch Starlink grow stronger, rather than Zero Wing, which would indirectly help Unyielding Soul. If Starlink succeeded, it could keep both Unyielding Soul and Crimson Emperor in check, after all. As for Zero Wing's other members in Deep Thunder, they were no threat to Starlink's 2 old monsters. While Sword Demon and Xueqi fought, a black figure appeared behind the younger swordsman. It was none other than Wind Demon. The assassin expert split into 9 shadows that attacked Xueqi in silence. Meanwhile, Sword Demon created 4 copies of his great sword, sending innumerable sword lights to devour Xueqi. Facing simultaneous attacks from the 2 old monsters, not even Xueqi could defend himself. He immediately activated Void Shield to block the incoming attacks. A single round of attacks was enough to deplete 1/6 of the Void Shield's energy reserves. These attacks' power could easily rival that of Grand Lords of the same level. What a powerful life-saving skill. Wind Demon was slightly surprised to see the magic barrier that had appeared around Xueqi. Unfortunately, that won't save you. With Old Sword and I working together, you have no chance of winning this fight. You're not wrong, but that would require that you two can cooperate, Xueqi calmly replied, glancing at Wind Demon. You still have such confidence even in the face of death? Wind Demon could not help but laugh at Xueqi. However, Wind Demon's laughter stopped abruptly as his expression changed, and he activated his life-saving skill, Wind Steps. Without warning, a crimson figure had appeared beside the old assassin, thrusting a short sword toward Wind Demon's heart. However, Wind Demon reacted quickly enough that he could use the brief invulnerability Wind Steps provided to protect himself. But the moment Wind Demon lost his invulnerability status, the crimson figure stabbed at him again. This time, the old monster met the attack with one of his own daggers. Boom! Wind Demon's arm went numb as he was thrown several yards back, crashing to the ground. His dagger hummed as it vibrated from the impact. Who are you? Wind Demon demanded, addressing the crimson figure with a serious expression. Do you the outcome that awaits any who attack me? An assassin's strength had proven greater than his, and his assailant's attack speed was superior as well. Once he got a better look at his newest opponent, Wind Demon was stunned. What the? Wind Demon wasn't the only player surprised to see this crimson figure. Everyone on the battlefield was stupefied. This crimson figure, which had surprised a superpower's old monster, was none other than Zero Wing's fire dance. Everyone on the battlefield erupted in an uproar. Nobody had expected Zero Wing to reveal another such trump card. This turn of events even surprised Mu Cheng. Black Flame. I hadn't thought that your guild had hidden such an expert. However, do you think that you can defeat Starlink just because you have someone to pin down Old Wind? Sword Demon asked as he glanced at Fire Dance. Suddenly, 12 Starlink members moved to surround Xueqi. Although Fire Dance's combat power was unexpected, Zero Wing's party was still outnumbered. Moreover, 4 of Starlink's 12 members were peak experts. Do you think you're powerful just because you have more people? Xueqi countered, eyeing Starlink's players around him. He then activated Twilight's Shadow and Twilight of the Gods. Suddenly, 8 copies of Xueqi joined the battlefield, every one of these doppelgangers radiating an intensely frightening aura that was no weaker than Xueqi's. All right, let the second round begin. Chapter 2096. Vicious Black Flame. The confident Starlink's members had displayed vanished as Xueqi's 8 doppelgangers joined the fray. At the same time, fear surfaced in their eyes as Starlink's members looked at Xueqi's doppelgangers. The nearby spectators' eyes nearly fell from their sockets when they saw this. Crap! Is this real? Cheating. He is definitely cheating. Many experts watching from a distance couldn't help but shout in indignation. The Zero Wing members watching from outside of the battlefield, however, began to cheer. All hail the guild leader. Zero Wing for the win. No one had held a favorable view of Zero Wing when this competition had begun. Some had even been certain that Zero Wing would perish after this, and everyone had mocked the guild. Now, however, would anyone dare question Zero Wing's superiority? A special doppelganger skill? Sword Demon's expression twisted as he observed Xueqi's doppelgangers. He had already struggled against Xueqi alone. After all, the younger swordsman's basic attributes were higher than his. If not for the significant strength and speed boost his special weapon provided, Xueqi would have already defeated him. Yet, now, he had to face 9 identical copies of this troublesome swordsman. He might not have been worried if these copes had been ordinary doppelgangers. If that were the case, their basic attributes would be far lower than the originals. At most, these doppelgangers might have slowed him down a little, which would be annoying, but from what Sword Demon could sense, these doppelgangers' attributes rivaled his own. Sword Demon felt an intense pressure from each clone, which meant that Xueqi had just gained 8 more monster-level experts. Of course, this was the best-case scenario for Xueqi. If Sword Demon actually continued this fight, it would be a different story. After all, everyone's attention span was limited. Even if Xueqi were a domain realm expert, he couldn't perfectly control all 8 doppelgangers and fight. Controlling a doppelganger was far more complex than controlling one's body. Controlling a single doppelganger perfectly was the limit for a domain realm expert. Controlling more would affect the doppelganger's performance. However, even if Xueqi couldn't control all 8 doppelgangers perfectly, he shouldn't have a problem exhibiting flowing water realm combat standards with them. With his ridiculously high basic attributes, each of his doppelgangers could face a peak expert of the same level. In other words, Zero Wing's party had suddenly gained another 8 peak experts. Unfortunately, Starlink only had a total of 5 peak experts on battlefield number 1, and the strongest of them, Tengu, had already been killed. This left Starlink with only 4 peak experts, and the remaining members were only Refinement Realm and Flowing Water Realm experts. Overall, Starlink was now at a massive disadvantage. Even Wind Demon gulped nervously as he watched Xueqi. Who is this kid? Wind Demon wondered as he stared at the young swordsman in confusion. Not only had Xueqi successfully reached the domain realm at such a young age, but he had also amassed absurdly high basic attributes. Now, he had revealed a doppelganger skill that defied common sense. No matter how Wind Demon considered the situation, he couldn't believe it. No individual player could easily obtain Xueqi's weapons, equipment, or skills. Acquiring any of these required an astronomical amount of resources and manpower. The 4 shadow demons had only even secured their current weapons, equipment, and skills thanks to Starlink's help. However, Xueqi had collected such items by relying on a guild that only controlled one kingdom. Amazing! With this, Starlink is finished in battlefield number 1. Mu Chung balled his fists in delight as he glanced at Blind Man. He had been worried for Zero Wing, and if not for Blind Man's interference, he would have jumped into this battle to help the guild. However, Blind Man's efforts had gone to waste with this new development. Just as Xueqi was about to attack Starlink's members, a low voice reached his ears. Guild leader Black Flame, don't be so quick to act. Blackwater's Jing Yang called out. You've already proven Zero Wing's strength. I doubt anyone will continue to oppose Zero Wing's participation in this competition for energy crystals. So do you need to exterminate them all? What are you trying to say? Xueqi asked as he eyed Jing Yang, who wore aqua-blue robes and carried a glowing golden staff. Jing Yang had made no effort to hide his equipment's glowing effects, so Xueqi knew that the man carried 4 pieces of epic equipment in total. Although Xueqi couldn't discern what rank Jing Yang's staff was, he guessed that it was at least epic rank based on its aura. Moreover, Jing Yang wore a complete level 65 fine gold set equipment, which even the various superpowers struggled to collect. Level 65 fine gold set equipment was far more difficult to acquire than level 60 dark gold set equipment at this stage of the game. Not even Starlink had a complete set. Naturally, a level 65 fine gold set had even higher basic attribute bonuses than level 60 dark gold set equipment. The mana fluctuations around Jing Yang were even stronger than those around Wilting Netherworld, and his combat standards were likely stronger than hers. He had reached the Void Realm more than a decade ago, and although wilting Netherworld was a prodigy, she would need more time before she could catch up to Jingyang. Starlink only acted in compliance with the rules our superpowers agreed to. If Guild Leader Black Flame is earnest in moving against Starlink, the rest of us won't just sit back and watch. I hope you can understand this, Jingyang said, smiling. Jingyang's words left everyone stunned. They had never expected this battle to take such a drastic turn. Blackwater is too shameless. It didn't step forward when Starlink was about to annihilate Zero Wing, but now that Zero Wing has the upper hand, it wants to interfere. Since when have Blackwater and Starlink had such a good relationship? Zero Wing is in trouble now. Such a powerful doppelganger skill definitely has a very long cooldown. If Zero Wing misses this opportunity to take out Starlink, it isn't likely that the guild will find another chance. Zero Wing is so unlucky. If it hadn't provoked Blackwater, the guild likely wouldn't have interfered today. For a time, the various major powers either pitted or mocked Zero Wing's situation. Melody, I advise that you give up any hope for Zero Wing. Zero Wing might have the strength to resist a superpower, but it has provoked too many. Zero Wing can't survive in God's domain for long. This situation is the best proof. Just before Zero Wing emerges victorious in this fight, Blackwater steps in. Zero Wing has no chance of winning White River City's auction house, Evil Judgment said, chuckling when he saw Melody's enraged expression. Blackwater was no weaker than Starlink, and although it hadn't sent as many experts to this competition, it had nearly as many experts fighting for the auction house as Starlink. Including Jingyang, Blackwater had 4 peak experts and 7 refinement realm and flowing water realm experts on battlefield number 1. In addition, the guild had the domain realm expert, South Time, the man standing behind Jingyang. Although South Time had only recently reached the domain realm, he was still a monster-level expert. His participation would be more than enough to turn the tides of the battle between Starlink and Zero Wing. If Zero Wing missed this opportunity to eliminate Starlink's members, it wouldn't encounter another. Regardless of what Xueqi decided, Zero Wing was guaranteed to lose White River City. Understand. Xueqi could not help but laugh. You think you qualify to stop me? Suddenly, Xueqi vanished. Before anyone could react, he reappeared before Jingyang, his killing ray releasing a brilliant blue glow. Tier 2 taboo skill, Instant Strike. A streak of blue light flew toward Jingyang's throat, and the man panicked at the sudden attack. Xueqi's attack was so fast that he didn't even have time to activate Blink. Just before the blue light bit into the man, his golden staff released a golden light, instantly creating a barrier of light around Jingyang. Seeing this barrier, Jingyang could not help but breathe out a sigh of relief. The passive skill, 3 Pillars Barrier, had created this light barrier. The ability triggered automatically when its wielder faced a lethal attack. When activated, the skill created a magic barrier that negated 90% of all attacks damage for 3 seconds. It also increased his defense by 300%, raising his defense to rival an MT's of the same level. It was an amazing life-saving skill that had a 1-hour cooldown, and with it, even Grand Lords would struggle to kill him. However, the moment after Jingyang sighed, Xueqi's attack struck. The light barrier cracked, and Jingyang instantly lost 1/3 of his HP. The man paled with fright. Although he immediately tried to escape by using Blink, Xueqi's Twilight Blade had already begun its descent. When the second slash landed, Jingyang's HP dropped to 0 in an instant without the protection of the 3 Pillars Barrier. His body only teleported 20 yards away after Jingyang's vision began to darken. He then collapsed and disintegrated into countless particles of light. Chapter 2097. Suppressing a Guild Alone. Xueqi had slain Jingyang so quickly that no one had time to react. He had simply disappeared and reappeared before Jingyang, and in the next moment, the Blackwater member's corpse had appeared 20 yards away. The entire process had happened in the blink of an eye. Even Snowscar, who had stood beside Jingyang, hadn't had time to react. Snowscar had only been able to watch as Xueqi killed Jingyang before his eyes and casually sheathed his killing ray and Twilight Blade. The various major powers experts watching from the sidelines gasped when they saw Jingyang's dead body. Horrifying. Vicious. These words no longer had the impact to describe Xueqi. Blackwater was a superpower with the strength to rival Starlink. Yet Xueqi had so effortlessly killed Jingyang, the leader of Blackwater's team in this competition, without hesitation. They couldn't fathom how Xueqi found the courage to provoke two superpowers simultaneously. Has Black Flame lost his mind? Why did he attack Blackwater? He probably has. With Blackwater's interference, Zero Wing is dead either way. Rather than sit back and wait for his execution, Black Flame might have decided to make a last stand. Only, his attack against that Blackwater representative had been vicious. It didn't look like something a human would be capable of. That wasn't wise. Does Black Flame think that he can turn things around by retaliating against Blackwater? With Blackwater in the fight, Zero Wing's performance will suffer on all of the battlefields, not just battlefield number 1. Everyone was more surprised by Xueqi's decisiveness than they were over Jingyang's instant death. Although Xueqi's doppelganger skill had significantly increased his team's overall strength, Starlink and Blackwater would have more peak experts than Zero Wing if they worked together. Blackwater even had its own apex expert, Black Flame. Snow Scar, who served as Blackwater's vice-team leader, bellowed. Blackwater might not suffer any major losses to its combat power due to Jingyang's death, but he was the guild's representative. Killing him was a slap in the face to Blackwater. Moreover, Xuanwu Chisa was fully responsible for this operation. How was Snow Scar supposed to explain this to her? With South Time at the lead, Blackwater's experts pounced on Xueqi. Tier 2 taboo skill, Ghost Dance. Suddenly, South Time split into 5 clones and attacked Xueqi from different directions, each doppelganger sending more than a dozen slashes at its target, surrounding Xueqi with sword images. Like hungry wolves, the sword images flew toward Xueqi's vitals and blind spots. Meanwhile, Snow Scar leaped into the air and activated his strongest taboo skill, Lightning Madness. Not only was this skill an AoE attack, but it also had enough power to force a Grand Lord of the same level stumbling back. The skill even ignored invulnerability effects, and although the skill required half a second to activate, which was more than enough time for a peak expert to evade, he used the skill in conjunction with South Time's Ghost Dance. Against this joint attack, even a Domain Realm expert would fall. What an amazing two-part attack! Sword Demon couldn't help but admire South Time and Snow Scar's coordinated assault. Even he would be concerned if he were on that attack's receiving end. South Time's Ghost Dance in particular, perfectly eliminated the target's chances to evade. The target would be forced to face these skills head-on. However, not even Sword Demon was confident of surviving 60+ simultaneous attacks. He would have no choice but to activate a life-saving skill before dealing with Snow Scar's final blow. However, Xueqi didn't activate a life-saving skill despite so many incoming attacks. Instead, he simply brandished Killing Ray, countering South Time's strikes. Shadow Blade. 10 Shadow Blades flew away from Xueqi in all directions, crashing into the incoming sword images. He then executed Sword's Orbit, manifesting a galaxy of stars around himself. Like dominoes, the sword images the Shadow Blades struck crashed into each other. Xueqi's counterattack threw off nearly 50 sword images trajectories, while he used Sword's Orbit to neutralize the remaining 20 or so sword images. South Time was stunned to see Xueqi so easily nullify his Ghost Dance, but Snow Scar had already swung his Hammer of Lightning, slamming the gigantic weapon down on Xueqi with astonishing speed. Unfortunately, Xueqi no longer had the energy to block this lightning-fast attack. But just as the lightning hammer was about to smash into Xueqi, the swordsman spun around and shouted, "Scram!" As Xueqi spoke, a powerful shockwave crashed into Snow Scar's lightning hammer. Dragon Breath. The instant the two attacks collided, space tore apart, and the resulting shockwave reached 100 yards away. The sound of the impact echoed across the battlefield. The immensely powerful lightning hammer vanished as if it had never existed as Snow Scar stumbled back more than a dozen yards, losing nearly 10% of his HP. How is this possible? Shock colored Snow Scar's face as he stared at Xueqi. Xueqi had neutralized his full-powered attack with a single roar. Moreover, the swordsman hadn't used a single life-saving skill to counter their joint attack. Is he a monster? The major powers experts were flabbergasted when they saw Xueqi unharmed after the exchange. Both South Time and Snow Scar's attacks had enough strength to rival a Grand Lord of the same level, yet Xueqi had blocked them without breaking a sweat. Friends from Blackwater, Black Flame won't be easy to deal with. Starlink will pin him down while you get rid of Zero Wing's other members, Sword Demon said suddenly. Okay. We'll leave that to you then. South Time nodded. After a final glance at Xueqi, he and the other Blackwater members charged towards Zero Wing's party. Don't think you can get away from me so easily. Xueqi frowned as he manipulated his 8 doppelgangers to attack South Time's group. We'll have to see if you have the ability to stop them. Wind Demon and his Starlink companions immediately intercepted Xueqi's doppelgangers. Each doppelganger only had the combat power of a peak expert, and although Wind Demon and his team would have a very difficult time trying to kill them, pinning these doppelgangers down for a few moments wouldn't be an issue. With the strength of Blackwater's members, they should be able to slay Zero Wing's members before the doppelgangers slipped past Wind Demon's team. I pin Fire Dance down. The rest of you need to end the fight as quickly as possible. South Time hurriedly commanded. Understood. Blackwater's dozen or so members immediately split into 3 groups. Each under the lead of a peak expert. These 3 groups would be more than enough to deal with Zero Wing's 3 remaining members. For a time, chaos ruled over the battlefield. South Time kept Fire Dance busy while Alluring Summer, Shadow Sword, and Flying Shadow had their hands full with Blackwater's peak experts. With the help of Blackwater's other players, this battle was particularly bitter. Due to interference from 2 Refinement Realm magical class experts, Xueqi wasn't able to shake off Sword Demon. Likewise, Wind Demon and his assassin team kept Xueqi's doppelgangers occupied. As they watched, the experts from the various major powers couldn't help but admire Xueqi. The swordsman managed to suppress all of Starlink's experts by himself, and even if Zero Wing lost today, it would be a glorious defeat. What a pity, Black Flame. I admit that your strength is superb. Even among the various superpowers, you cannot be ignored. However, you're still just one person, and God's Domain is not a single-player game. Sword Demon commented as he watched Zero Wing's enemies force its members into a coma. You're right, God's Domain isn't a single-player game, Xueqi said, nodding. His lips then curled as he asked, however, when have I ever said that Zero Wing only relies on me? Summer. Shadow. You don't need to hold back anymore. Activate the secret law and show these people what the consequences are for provoking Zero Wing. Hearing Xueqi's command, Alluring Summer and Shadow Sword's eyes began to glow as they waged a bitter battle. We can finally make a move? Excitement brightened Alluring Summer's features as she used Blink to put some distance between her and her opponents. I've been waiting to hear those words for so long, Guild Leader. Shadow Sword said, laughing. Like beasts waking from their slumber, the intensity of Alluring Summer and Shadow Sword's auras skyrocketed, becoming even more frightening than those monster-level experts like Wind Demon and South Time. Chapter 2098. Peerless Aura. Before anyone could react to Xueqi's command, Alluring Summer and Shadow Sword's auras washed over the battlefield. Everyone fell silent as they unconsciously turned toward the 2 players, dumbfounded. What powerful auras! How is this possible? Aren't berserk skills prohibited in the auction arena? The feeling of the 2 Zero Wing members' auras had changed completely. For a moment, everyone felt like they stood before 2 Grand Lord-ranked monsters. In God's Domain, players would determine their opponent's strength based on their auras in situations where they couldn't inspect the opponent's information. A player's aura couldn't be faked. Expert players, in particular, relied on this method to avoid unnecessary deaths. The fact that Alluring Summer and Shadow Sword's auras had abruptly grown stronger meant that their combat power had just increased. However, players weren't allowed to use tools or berserk skills in the auction arena. No one on the battlefield could figure out how these 2 had suddenly become so powerful. Blackwater's members paused their assault, shuddering, as they felt the sudden transformation. These experts stared at Zero Wing's players in fear, too wary to attack. Alluring Summer and Shadow Sword now displayed the auras of Domain Realm experts. If they attacked and exposed a weakness, this fight might end in an instant. Don't be fooled. Snow Scar shouted when he realized that his allied had stopped their assault. No one in this arena can use a berserk skill to increase their strength. They must be using some special skill that increases the mental pressure other players feel their combat power shouldn't have actually increased. They are merely putting up a front. Although weapons and equipment that increased the mental pressure one's enemies experienced were excruciatingly rare in God's Domain, they existed nevertheless. Damn! That really spooked me. I almost thought that Zero Wing had 2 more monsters. Black Flame nearly fooled me too. It really would be heaven-defying if Zero Wing had another 2 monster-level experts. I will admit though, that Zero Wing is pretty impressive to get its hands on such weapons and equipment. That's right. I've only heard of such items before today. I've never actually seen one. Although such items won't improve one's combat power, a stronger aura can affect an opponent's mental state and slow their reactions. Such items would be incredibly useful in PvP. When they heard Snow Scar's comment, realization dawned on the various major powers experts watching from a distance. They all agreed with his reasoning. It would simply be too horrific if Zero Wing had truly revealed more monster-level experts. Weapons and equipment that strengthen auras? Sword Demon muttered to himself as he glanced at Alluring Summer and Shadow Sword. He then shook his head and smiled at Xueqi. And here I thought you were going to reveal another powerful trump card. It seems you're at your wit's end. Although such weapons and equipment would be awesomely effective in PvP, I'm afraid mere gimmicks are useless against experts who have experienced countless battles. At best, they might delay your player's fate. Is that so? Xueqi replied with a calm smile. Suddenly, the atmosphere around Xueqi changed. Like Alluring Summer and Shadow Sword's transformations, Xueqi's aura became considerably more powerful. Space around him even began to blur. Sensing this change, Sword Demon's expression darkened. If Xueqi's aura had resembled a great ocean that could even stifle peak experts, those who bathed in it now felt as if they had been submerged in mercury. Xueqi's aura felt incomparably heavy, and even Sword Demon struggled to breathe. Fear flashed in Sword Demon's eyes as he stared at Xueqi. He was an expert that stood at the apex of God's domain, a player that every superpower feared, yet he felt the threat of death loom over him as he stood before Xueqi. He felt as if he were standing before a humanoid Tyrannosaurus Rex, rather than another player. Moreover, Xueqi's control of his aura was exceptional. Sword Demon could tell that Xueqi had restrained his aura to his immediate surroundings, so no one but him sensed how horrifying it truly was. Do you still think that I'm just trying to buy time? Xueqi smiled at Sword Demon. Secret laws weren't categorized as skills or spells, resembling combat techniques instead. They didn't improve players' basic attributes, only allowing players to exhibit more of their body's potential. Hence, players could freely use secret laws within the auction arena, and they didn't need to worry about their secret laws dropping if they died. The system didn't actually consider the deaths players suffered in the auction arena as official. This was why secret laws were so valuable. The various superpowers had even offered to trade epic set equipment for a basic secret law during Xueqi's previous life, since the secret laws would be far more effective in the auction arenas than epic set equipment. The physique improvement secret laws provided was secondary, however. More importantly, secret laws allowed players to enter a supersensory state. In this state, player senses became so sharp that they could perceive things they couldn't normally detect. Of course, how useful this was would depend on the player. As soon as Xueqi finished speaking, Sword Demon had an extremely bad premonition. Sword Demon felt that the younger swordsman's smile looked like the expression one would use when mocking an ignorant fool. Moreover, Xueqi looked down at him as if he were watching an ant. Sword Demon had seen that expression on many powerhouses before. Quick! Everyone retreat! Sword Demon instinctively shouted. He hadn't been able to determine whether or not the change to Alluring Summer and Shadow Sword's auras was truly related to a combat power increase, but after experiencing Xueqi's enhanced aura, he was absolutely certain that this transformation wasn't due to a weapon or equipment effect. Rather, it was a byproduct of their combat power increasing. Retreat! Why are we retreating? The players from Starlink and Blackwater were confused when they heard the command. Victory was already within reach. As long as they kept fighting for another minute or so, they'd win, yet Sword Demon wanted them to flee. Sword Demon has gone too far with his affection for talented individuals. Blind Man frowned at Sword Demon's warning. Is that really the case? Mu Chang, who stood beside Blind Man, wondered as he watched the old monster's tense expression. No matter how he looked at it, that expression didn't look like affection. It looked like Sword Demon was terrified. When Sword Demon saw his allies' confusion, his anxiety grew, but as he was about to explain, he heard the sound of laughter. It's too late to escape now. The moment this voice reached his ears, Sword Demon instinctively brandished his greatsword, swinging the weapon at Xueqi, who had suddenly appeared before him. The older swordsman instantly split into 3 clones, each launching multiple attacks with the strength to suppress Grand Lords of the same level. This was Sword Demon's final trump card and his weapon's strongest additional skill, Phantom Assault. In his hands, this skill could even kill Domain Realm experts in an instant if they didn't activate an invulnerability skill. However, Xueqi easily deflected the dozen or so attacks with his killing ray, displaying far faster reaction speed than before. Shadow Blade. 10 sword lights flew towards Sword Demon simultaneously, each aiming for his weak points, but not to be outdone, Sword Demon executed an advanced defensive combat technique to evade the incoming attacks. 1 attack. 2 attacks. 3 attacks. After blocking the 7th sword light, Sword Demon hit his limit, and the 3 remaining attacks tore through his body. The last 2/3 of his HP vanished instantly. Elsewhere on the battlefield, Alluring Summer and Shadow Sword had made their move, slaying the 2 Blackwater Peak experts they faced within 2 or 3 moves. With this turn of events, the battlefield fell deathly silent. Chapter 2099. Horrifying. Predicament, they're dead? Didn't they say that Zero Wings members were only using items that increased their auras? When the various experts on the battlefield saw the corpses of Sword Demon and 2 Blackwater Peak experts disintegrate into particles of light, their eyes nearly fell from their sockets in shock. Both sides had been evenly matched and fought each other to a standstill earlier, yet something like this had happened within seconds. No one had expected this outcome. Even Mu Chung was speechless for a long moment. Even among super guilds, experts like Sword Demon were exceedingly rare. Trying to kill an expert with such high combat standards was nearly impossible without launching a large-scale operation and multiple domain realm experts. This was also why the various superpowers had such huge headaches when dealing with the 4 shadow demons. Yet, Xueqi had relied on his own strength to kill Shadow Demon. His combat power was truly horrific. Logically, no player should be capable of the feat. Moreover, Zero Wing had Alluring Summer and Shadow Sword, who had suddenly revealed their monster-level abilities. The fact that a guild like Zero Wing had 2 monster-level experts surprising enough, yet 2 more had appeared from the guild. With this strength, Zero Wing could rival ordinary superpowers. To think Zero Wing has hidden so much power all this time. It's no wonder why it dared to ignore Starlink and Blackwater's threats. As Blind Man looked at Xueqi now, he felt as if he were meeting this swordsman for the first time. 1 monster-level expert in Zero Wing was enough to warrant the various superpowers' attention, but with 4, not even King's Return could afford to underestimate the guild. Blind Man finally realized why Deep Thunder had shown such strong support for Zero Wing, even willing to provoke Starlink and Blackwater. Zero Wing was only as powerful as a first-rate guild, lacking the resources and territory to nurture experts, yet despite that, it had successfully produced 4 monster-level experts. It was easy to imagine what strength the guild would wield if it became a true super first-rate guild. Zero Wing would likely rise to the upper ranks the moment it became a superpower. It would become as powerful as guilds like Miracle, and even the various super guilds would fear its wrath. Miracle currently occupied 2 empires, and both were on different continents, the East and West continents. In other words, Miracle fought on 2 front lines. Not even King's Return had such power. In contrast, Deep Thunder watched Zero Wing's outstanding performance with elation. We really made the right bet this time. Deep Thunder's eyes glowed as he watched Alluring Summer and Shadow Sword fight in the distance. He had thought Zero Wing only had 2 monster-level experts. Neither he nor Nature Hall as a whole had expected to find 4 of them in the guild. As far as ordinary major powers were concerned, monster-level experts simply had inhuman combat power. Even if these powers got lucky and produced one of their own, they'd only treat that expert like a weapon against their enemies. However, that would be an ignorant use of such a powerful player. In reality, not only did monster-level experts pose a great threat to the various superpowers, but they also played a crucial role in obtaining powerful items. Based on the various superpowers research, one needed strength, as well as luck, to secure certain powerful tools. As guilds procured more powerful items, they'd grow stronger overall. One could say that monster-level experts were responsible for finding 70% of the powerful items the various superpowers had collected. Since Nature Hall had only recently become a superpower, It had far fewer monster-level experts in its midst than other super first-rate guilds. The fact had troubled the guild for some time now. Yet, as luck would have it, many of God's domain's super high-ranked quests required more than one person to complete. They needed the strength of a team. But how rare were monster-level experts? Even in veteran superpowers, one could count the number of monster-level experts present on one hand. If Nature Hall wanted to complete super high-ranked quests, it would need to work with other superpowers, but if it chose that option, it would gain far less. However, it would be a different story if Nature Hall worked with Zero Wing. Zero Wing was still only a first-rate guild. To develop further, it would need an astronomical amount of resources, not powerful items. As it so happened, Nature Hall had plenty of resources. Nature Hall would benefit more by partnering with Zero Wing than it would if it worked with other superpowers. Both guilds would be able to complement each other's deficiencies. This was why Nature Manifestation had sent Deep Thunder to befriend Zero Wing. While everyone was shocked over the strength Zero Wing's members had displayed, Xueqi, Alluring Summer, and Shadow Sword busied themselves by slaughtering Starlink and Blackwater's Oler experts. Although deep-sea meditation was only a basic secret law, maintaining it placed an immense burden on players. Players couldn't even keep it active as long as a berserk skill. Fortunately, the difference between both sides' strength was massive. Xueqi and his companions only need a few moves to dispatch each of their opponents. In less than 10 seconds, Blackwater's members had been annihilated. Even South Time, Blackwater's domain realm expert, hadn't survived the combined assault from Alluring Summer and Shadow Sword. As for Starlink, only Wind Demon remained alive. The battle was utterly one-sided. As he faced Xueqi's relentless pursuit, Wind Demon continued to lose HP. 80%. 50%, 20%. However, despite his rapidly depleting HP, Wind Demon didn't panic. Instead, he turned his mocking gaze on Xueqi and said, "I have really underestimated you people from Zero Wing. But so what if you defeat us? At the end of the day, this is only one of 5 battlefields. Starlink and Blackwater still have plenty of experts on the other 4. On the other hand, all of Zero Wing's top fighters are stuck on this battlefield." Zero Wing had certainly proven stronger than they had expected, but the results of one battlefield wouldn't decide this competition's victor. Although Zero Wing had indeed defeated their 2 guilds here, with its peak combatants isolated to battlefield number 1, it would suffer on the other 4 battlefields. In the end, Zero Wing would still lose White River City. Wind Demon had spoken loudly enough to ensure that the major powers experts, who stood several hundred yards away, had heard him. Those experts couldn't help but watch Xueqi with pitying looks. "In the end, Zero Wing will lose," one of the spectating experts mumbled. Although Zero Wing had won the battle, it had lost the competition. Black Flame. "You asked for this. Since you rejected my offer, you'll pay for your foolishness for the rest of your life." Jing Yang, who had resurrected in the arena, bellowed as he glared at Xueqi through the magic mirror. He then commanded his people through the team chat, "Everyone, heed my command. Work with Starlink's members to eliminate Zero Wing." He had planned to give Zero Wing one more chance to hand over the Guardian puppets. If Zero Wing agreed and behaved itself, Blackwater would give up its aggression against the guild. However, he abandoned the thought his desire to see Xueqi despair was far stronger than his desire to complete the task Xuan Wuchisa had given him. Chapter 2100. Divine Appearance. As soon as Jing Yang issued the command, Blackwater's members on the other 4 battlegrounds began to cooperate with Starlink's members against Zero Wing. Although Battlefield Number 1 had a collection of monsters, the other battlefields had barely any. For example, Blackwater didn't have a single monster-level expert among the 4 other battlefields, and Starlink only had the 2 remaining shadow demons. However, while the 4 remaining battlefields did not have many monster-level experts, more players had been assigned to these battlefields than those on Battlefield Number 1. Every one of the 4 remaining battlefields had at least 100 Blackwater and Starlink members in total, and even the weakest of these players was a Refinement Realm expert. In contrast, even when added together, Blackwater and Starlink had fewer than 40 members on Battlefield Number 1. There was simply no comparison between Battlefield Number 1 and the others. Blackwater and Starlink's forces on battlefields number 2 and 3 were led by Mad Demon and Heart Demon. Even the other superpowers were afraid of facing those forces. Zero Wing is in trouble now. Elua Fei from the FFF Adventure Ream commented as she watched Blackwater and Starlink's joint forces. Although Zero Wing had emerged victorious on Battlefield No. 1, despite the monsters there, it was at an overwhelming disadvantage on the other battlefields, especially Battlefields No. 2 and 3. A 100-man team of Refinement Realm experts, led by a Domain Realm expert, could even hunt down lone Domain Realm experts. On the other hand, Zero Wing only had around 20 players on each of these battlefields, and they didn't have any monster-level experts to lead them. They stood no chance against Blackwater and Starlink's forces. The auction house competition was about securing energy crystals, and as time passed, more crystals would descend onto the battlefields. At that time, the advantage of having more players would become obvious, and Zero Wing would suffer an even greater disadvantage. Black Flame's decision was really unwise. If he hadn't provoked Blackwater into cooperating with Starlink, Zero Wing might have had a chance of victory. At the very least, Zero Wing could have taken advantage of the chaos as the various superpowers would eventually fight over the energy crystals. Now, however, the participating superpowers want to avoid a battle with the two guilds. There won't be any chaos for Zero Wing to take advantage of, Yan Tianqing said, sighing as he watched Xueqi through a magic mirror. This was the problem all developing guilds faced. Even if a developing guild had the strength to fight a superpower, other superpowers wouldn't sit idle and allow a new superpower to rise. They would usually cooperate to apply pressure on the developing guild and prevent the growth of a new rival. Yan Tianqing had faced the same when he had established his own guild some years ago. In the end, he had been forced to abandon the guild and establish an adventurer team instead. Now, it was Zero Wing's turn. The situation somewhat saddened the various major powers, as well. They had thought that they'd get to witness a guild with no background become a new superpower, but it seemed that opportunity was gone. First- and second-rate guilds dreamed of becoming superpowers, titans in the virtual gaming world, but the road to becoming a superpower was an arduous one. Without a powerful background and the support of major corporations, reaching such heights was nearly impossible. The fact that Zero Wing had become so powerful despite its lack of support or a background had shown these major powers a ray of hope. Now, however, that hope was about to be extinguished. Despite such a powerful monster like Xueqi in its midst, Zero Wing would suffer in the end. Needless to say, ordinary first- and second-rate guilds wouldn't fare any better. Ha ha ha. Black Flame, I'll finally have my retribution. Singular Burial, who currently wore Blackwater's guild emblem, laughed maniacally as he watched the magic mirror hovering above Battlefield No. 3. He had waited for this day for a long time now. He should have been Star Moon Kingdom's overlord, becoming a titan in the virtual gaming world, but Zero Wing had foiled his plans and in the end he was nothing more than a commander in Blackwater. His hatred for Zero Wing was endless due to this. He had thought he had lost his chance to see Zero Wing perish, so he was overwhelmingly delighted at the moment. Without White River City's auction house, Zero Wing would lose the city. Without the headquarters it had painstakingly developed, Zero Wing's development would suffer. In this era of fierce competition, even a small setback could destroy a guild's positions, not to mention something as major as losing one's main headquarters. While Singular Burial celebrated Zero Wing's downfall, Blackwater's team in Battlefield No. 3 had met up with Starlink's team near a descended energy crystal. Starlink's Heart Demon then took command of the joint team. The other superpowers, who had been waiting for the energy crystal to drop, promptly moved aside. The nearby major powers experts gasped when they saw this. So, this is Blackwater and Starlink's joint force? Dust Blood from Bloodbath family felt his scalp tingle when he saw the gathered expert players below the descending crystal. The team consisted of more than 120 Starlink and Blackwater members, and every one of these players felt incredibly dangerous to Dust Blood. There were also 6 specific players that Dust Blood couldn't even bring himself to look at. Each of these 6 wore at least 2 or 3 epic weapons or equipment pieces. However, these 6 players paled in comparison to Heart Demon, the hunchbacked old man that led the team and truly instilled fear in Dust Blood's heart. Even though Dust Blood was not a magical class player, he could see the mana circling Heart Demon's body. Meanwhile, Heart Demon wore a total of 5 pieces of epic equipment. Although Dust Blood could not tell what rank the old man's staff was, the weapon radiated a soul-shuddering pressure. As far as Dust Blood was concerned, these 120-plus experts from Starlink and Blackwater could even destroy a top-ranked first-rate guild like Bloodbath family if given enough time. Sure enough, guilds like ours cannot afford to provoke superpowers. Morning Sun, the female elementalist leading Holy Reincarnations team in Battlefield Number 3, sighed when she saw the gathered force. This was superpower strength. Non-superpowers like the Bloodbath family and Holy Reincarnations simply couldn't compete. Setting aside monster-level experts, Blackwater and Starlink had even more combat power on Battlefield Number 3 than on Battlefield Number 1. Despite the great lengths Zero Wing had gone to defeat the two guilds on Battlefield Number 1, these superpowers had immediately formed another formidable team on another battlefield. Moreover, they had 3 more teams on the other battlefields. While the various major powers were awestruck over Blackwater and Starlink's strength, a team of 20-plus players made its presence known. Everyone made a ruckus when they saw this team. Why are Zero Wing's members here? Don't they know that Blackwater and Starlink will attack them the moment they show themselves? The various major powers experts shot the team incredulous looks. They couldn't believe that Zero Wing's members would be so daring. Unlike the team on Battlefield Number 1, this team didn't have any monster-level experts like Xueqi, Fire Dance, Alluring Summer, and Shadow Sword. Very good. And here I thought you would only act after a significant number of energy crystals had dropped. This will save me the trouble of looking for you. Heart Demon watched Zero Wing's team approach through narrowed eyes. With a wave of his hand he said, "I'm not like Old Wind and Old Sword. I prefer to settle troublesome matters as soon as possible. Everyone, attack. Do not let any of them get away." Blackwater and Starlink's experts swarmed toward Zero Wing's team under Heart Demon's command. However, once these experts got within 20 yards of Zero Wing's ream, a silver-armored woman wielding a golden greatsword emerged from the group. This woman brandished a greatsword at Blackwater and Starlink's many experts. 1 slash, 2 slashes, 3 slashes. The silver-armored woman executed 5 consecutive attacks, sending 5 sword lights flying at her opponents. Wherever the sword lights passed, they left behind a pitch-black spatial tear. Following which the 5 golden lights enveloped the advancing players. When the light finally faded, Blackwater and Starlink had less than 20 players on their team. The rest had transformed into countless particles of light and vanished. Suddenly, the battlefield was eerily silent. Chapter 2101 Monster Galore. The dissipating particles of light looked like fading fireworks on Battlefield Number 3. Gentle Snow, who stood among the fading particles, looked like a war goddess that had just descended onto the battlefield, her silver armor and golden greatsword only adding to her sacred majestic beauty. However, the only thing the watching players felt when they looked at her was panic. How? Dust Blood could not believe his eyes. Gentle Snow had just slain more than 100 experts from Starlink and Blackwater. Every one of those experts had even posed a threat to him, yet they had been nothing more than pests before Gentle Snow. With 5 slashes, she had wiped out 80% of the 2 superpowers joint team, and those that had survived had less than 50% of their HP remaining. Is she really a player? Spatial tears? Can current players even be this strong? The various major powers experts nearby couldn't help but watch Gentle Snow in fear. If she had used some sort of dazzling technique or powerful skill to defeat those experts, they'd, at most, be amazed. After all, that strength would have been on par with monster-level experts. However, that was clearly not the case here. Gentle Snow hadn't used a superb combat technique or skill at all. She had simply relied on brute force. With her extraordinary speed and strength, she had stomped on more than 100 Refinement Realm experts as if she were stomping on an anthill. This was 10 times more shocking than if she had defeated her opponents with a combat technique or skill. The system prohibited players from using tools or berserk skills in the auction arena. Yet, Gentle Snow had displayed strength that defied common sense. Only Tier 4 attacks and above could cause spatial tears. Even God's Domain's current monster-level experts could, at most, exhibit the strength of upper-rank Tier 3. Although the difference between Tier 4 and upper-rank Tier 3 didn't seem major, it was actually massive. It was like the difference between a Grand Lord and a mythic-ranked monster. Even Xueqi was astonished. He had to admit that fragmented legendary items were truly amazing. Gentle Snow currently carried 2 top-tier fragmented legendary items, and both were strength-based and quite compatible with the Berserker class. Furthermore, one of the items was a 2-handed weapon. As Gentle Snow reached higher levels, her strength would only rise to frightening levels. Purely comparing their strengths, Gentle Snow's was even higher than Xueqi's, and her physique rivaled his. When Gentle Snow had been questing, she had miraculously discovered a bloodline called the Great Earth Bloodline. Although it was a basic bloodline, it focused on improving a player's strength. Although this newfound strength didn't help Gentle Snow become as powerful as a mythic monster, she wasn't far from it. She was truly a humanoid Tyrannosaurus Rex. She has Tier 4 strength? After watching Gentle Snow's display, Heart Demon couldn't help but tense with fear. He'd rather fight old experts like Sword Demon than face a player with Tier 4 strength. With such an overwhelming advantage, Gentle Snow could easily outmaneuver any of his offensive or defensive moves. Fighting this female berserker head-on would be suicidal. While everyone was shocked over Gentle Snow's terrifying strength, the crimson-clad Zhao Yueru, who stood some distance behind her berserker friend, had finally finished casting her spell. Go! Zhao Yueru shouted as she waved her staff. Tier 2 Curse Scorching Thorns. Suddenly, hundreds of burning flowers appeared above Starlink and Blackwater's remaining experts. Under Zhao Yueru's control, these fire flowers shed thorns that rained down on her targets. Every one of these fire thorns had the strength to rival a Grand Lord of the same level. Moreover, her attacks were precise and numerous, making them impossible to dodge. Boom, boom, boom. A series of explosions shook the battlefield, followed by towering pillars of fire that rose into the air, one after another. When the flames subsided, only 3 peak experts from the 2 guilds remained alive. Everyone else had burned to death. This turn of events broke the spectators' minds. Isn't she a little too powerful? Another monster? Just how much power has Zero Wing hidden? Everyone was in shock as they stared at Gentle Snow and Zhao Yueru. Although none of them wanted to believe it, they had no choice after witnessing such a dazzling display. She's even stronger than before? Luofei, who sat in the spectator stands, was dumbfounded by Zhao Yueru's performance. She had a far better understanding of how powerful the woman was than the other spectators around her. If not for the auction arena's restrictions, Luofei guessed that Zhao Yueru could even solo Heart Demon. However, Luofei was even more surprised by the woman's improved combat standards. When Luofei had fought Zhao Yueru in the Black Dragon Empire, the latter had only been at the refinement realm, but now she had moved beyond that, and Luofei could see hints of Black Flame's abilities in Zhao Yueru's performance. Although she wasn't as powerful as Black Flame, Zhao Yueru had displayed incredible control over her spell. Luofei doubted that she could control hundreds of fire thorns as well as Zhao Yueru. How much time had actually passed since the ranking competition in the Black Dragon Empire? Improving one's combat standards wasn't as easy as upgrading one's equipment. It took a lot of time and effort to improve combat standards. A few months shouldn't be long enough, yet Zhao Yueru had managed it. Could it be because of Zero Wing? Luofei could not help but wonder. What did Zero Wing do? There was the same situation with Graceful Moon. Before joining Zero Wing, Graceful Moon had only been a relatively talented expert, but nothing compared to true geniuses. And yet, she had actually defeated 3 Refinement Realm experts from top-ranked first-rate guilds by herself. Now, Zhao Yueru displayed similarly frightening improvements. The various superpowers members that watched from the sidelines had fallen silent. They no longer looked down at Zero Wing in ridicule. Rather, they looked on in fear. Everyone had thought that Blackwater and Starlink had battlefield number 3 in the bag, but now, only Heart Demon remained of the 120-plus experts on the team. On the other hand, none of Zero Wing's members had taken damage. This didn't look good for Heart Demon. Gentle Snow and Zhao Yueru might not be domain realm experts, but they had the combat power to rival domain experts. These 2 women might actually be even more difficult to deal with than actual domain realm experts. Moreover, these women's classes complemented each other perfectly. The only option Heart Demon had left was a retreat. The old monster didn't have a second option. Damn it! How does Zero Wing have so many players with such monstrous attributes? Jing Yang, who watched via one of the gigantic hovering magic mirrors, paled when he saw the one-sided battle. The fact that Zero Wing had monsters like Fire Dance, Alluring Summer, and Shadow Sword was already unbelievable, but now, 2 more monsters stepped out of the shadows. For a moment Jing Yong even wondered if Zero Wing had found a way to cheat. However, he very quickly recovered his composure. Although Zero Wing now held an overwhelming advantage in 2 of the 5 battlefields, there were still 3 other battlefields. As long as Blackwater and Starlink dealt with the smaller guild on these battlefields, Zero Wing might still lose this competition. Only, the hope didn't last long as the other magic mirrors displayed more scenes that shattered Jing Yang's fantasies. In battlefield number 2, Zero Wing's Violet Cloud fought Mad Demon to a standstill. Moreover, Cola and Blackie trampled over Starlink and Blackwater's experts alongside her. In the end, Zero Wing secured an overwhelming victory in this battlefield, as well. In battlefield number 4, Aqua Rose and Turtledove worked together, displaying absurdly high combat power and holding their advantage over Blackwater and Starlink's experts. Wearing the Crystal Light set, Silent Blade, Remnant Cloud, and 7 Light easily overwhelmed the 2 superpowers peak experts in battlefield number 5 with their superior basic attributes. For a time, an uproar shook the auction arena. Nobody had dreamed that Zero Wing was actually so powerful. The guild had an absolute advantage in all 5 battlefields, increasing its collection of energy crystals. The first 3 battlefields were practically Zero Wing's home turf. The guild claimed over 70% of the energy crystals in these maps. The watching crowd only snapped out of its daze after the competition's ending bell had rung. In the end, Zero Wing secured first place in the auction arena with an overwhelming number of energy crystals. The system then repeated the results throughout Star Moon Kingdom 5 times. Not only had Zero Wing won White River City's auction house, but it had become one of the few guilds that owned one throughout God's domain. Chapter 2102, New Era. Once the competition reached its official end, the surviving participants were teleported out of their respective battlefields. Zero Wing's participants were transported to the auction arena's podium. When Zero Wing's 107 participants appeared on the gorgeous platform hovering in the center of the auction arena, they instantly became the center of everyone's attention. The magic mirrors across the city displayed this scene, so almost everyone in White River City had their eyes on Zero Wing's representatives. We won! Our guild won! The innumerable Zero Wing members throughout the city cheered excitedly when they saw their guildmates on the platform. White River City's citizens were not the only ones amazed by this outcome. Practically every player and power in Star Moon Kingdom was stunned. With just 107 players, Zero Wing had held White River City against 4 superpowers. Moreover, it had won the competition by a landslide. This was practically a dream. When the system had announced the auction arena's activation, even players who had just joined God's domain knew that the auction arenas would become a playground for the various superpowers. Lesser powers had no place in the competitions. Even if they wanted to fight for an NPC city's auction house, they'd have to wait for the second round of promoted NPC cities. Ordinary powers couldn't hope to understand the superpowers' level of strength. This fact had been proven true multiple times in God's domain already. Even before the auction arena system, countless powers had fallen, caught in the crossfire between competing superpowers. Even first-rate guilds had fallen which ordinary players already considered unreachable. Hence, nobody had expected for White River City's auction arena to end like this. By the time Xueqi, Zero Wing's guild leader held up the crystalline certificate that granted the guild the management rights over White River City's auction house, the arena's atmosphere had reached its peak. I finally have it. Xueqi burned with excitement as he gazed at the crystalline certificate that glowed with a multicolored light. In his previous life, he had been forced to watch the various major powers obtain control of the auction houses in NPC cities from the spectator stands. In this life, however, not only had his guild secured an NPC city's auction house, but Zero Wing was also one of the first guilds to do so. Countless Zero Wing members shouted their elation throughout White River City, their voices echoing down every street. It seemed like these players were trying to tell the world that from today, Zero Wing was White River City's true overlord. Now that Zero Wing had control of White River City's auction house, it had control over the city's economic lifeline. Even if multiple superpowers moved against Zero Wing, they couldn't touch the guild in this city. Moreover, Zero Wing now had an additional income source, which would guarantee a certain level of the guild's development. Zero Wing's position in Star Moon Kingdom was also unshakable now. Surpassing the guild within its kingdom was nearly impossible after this victory. In addition, as one of the first guilds to win the management rights to an NPC city's auction house, Zero Wing qualified to contest with the various superpowers for neutral maps. With a nigh-impenetrable mean headquarters, Zero Wing could afford to send more manpower to neutral maps. Now, Zero Wing truly had the potential to become a superpower in the future. A superpower. Countless powers and players in the virtual gaming world dreamed of commanding such power. When Gentle Snow and Aqua Rose saw the crystalline certificate in Xueqi's hand, they were just as emotional and excited. Neither of them ever thought that Zero Wing would reach this point. As the guild's core upper echelons, no one understood Zero Wing better than they did. The fact that Zero Wing had started as a guild with nothing, yet developed into something so powerful so rapidly was a miracle. Although some assumed otherwise, Zero Wing truly lacked a background. It didn't even have any financial support from major companies. Zero Wing had reached this point by relying on its own abilities. It wasn't anything like the various large guilds that didn't have to worry about needing funds. Black Flame has really tricked me. It's no wonder why Zero Wing has always been uninterested in the various superpowers olive branches, going so far as to provoke multiple superpowers. Galaxy Past, who sat in the spectator stands, couldn't help his rueful sigh as he watched Xueqi and the other Zero Wing members bask in their glory. When he thought back to his plan of surpassing Zero Wing with the Star Alliance, he found the idea laughable. Surpass. How was the Star Alliance going to do that? The 107 players on the levitating platform were enough to make the best first-rate guilds tremble in fear, not to mention Zero Wing's potential for growth. He more or less understood why Gentle Snow, Ouroboros's former guild leader, had joined Zero Wing. Many first-rate and pseudo-super first-rate guilds had reached out to Gentle Snow when Blackwater had annexed Ouroboros, but in the end she had chosen to join Zero Wing, becoming a laughingstock. This is strange, guild leader. Why do I feel like the various major powers here are actually excited about this? Purple Eye asked strangely as she looked around her. Zero Wing had won this competition. The various major powers present shouldn't have anything to do with this victory, yet they acted as if Zero Wing had won this auction arena for them all. It's only natural, Galaxy Past said, chuckling. Zero Wing broke the superpower's undefeatable curse and birthed a new era, so of course, the various major powers are excited. A new era? Realization dawned on Purple Jade. Superpowers had always been undefeatable in God's domain. Only other superpowers could contend with a superpower. In fact, this was common sense in the virtual gaming world. Although there had been instances of a non-superpower defeating some of God's domain's superpowers, these fights had been mere squabbles. They proved nothing. Moreover, these victors had relied on super-powerful items with limited effective periods. These items only allowed non-superpowers to shine for a limited time, and there was no relation between these items and a power's true strength. At most, these powers had attracted others' attention and envy. However, the auction arena tested the participating powers' comprehensive strength. No external items were allowed in the competition. Moreover, the various participating superpowers took this competition very seriously. Thus, Zero Wing was the first non-superpower to achieve true victory over multiple superpowers. This victory also proved that superpowers could be defeated. Interesting. The superpowers actually lost. It seems the era of superpowers' rule over God's domain has finally come to an end. After today, this is the era of new powers like us. In one of White River City's crowded advanced bars, upper echelons from powers that had been operated in secret began to grow restless after witnessing the auction house competition's outcome. Meanwhile, like the plague, news of Zero Wing's victory in White River City's auction arena spread throughout God's domain, reaching every major power and superpower on the continent. Chapter 2103. Uproar in Star Moon Kingdom. After Zero Wing won White River City's auction house, the various superpowers received the surprising news in less than 10 minutes. Although White River City was not an important NPC city, it was one of the first cities to have an active auction arena system. Naturally, the various superpowers wouldn't let it slip through their grasp. Yet, despite 4 superpowers fighting to secure the auction house, a non-superpower, Zero Wing, had won the competition. No matter how the various superpowers considered the news, it was unbelievable. The unexpected development made the superpower suspicious. They all suspected that Zero Wing had support from a super guild or a major corporation. However, regardless of their assumptions, Zero Wing's name had made it onto their lists, becoming a target to pay close attention to. After all, now that Zero Wing had secured an NPC city's auction house, it had gained a tremendous amount of financial strength. Moreover, this new income source was stable and beyond other powers' influence. With this, Zero Wing was one step closer to becoming a true superpower. Zero Wing succeeded? Phoenix Rain could not help but be surprised when she read the report from her subordinate. Before the auction arena competition, she had expressed her willingness to dispatch a portion of her strength to assist Zero Wing with Xueqi, but he had rejected her offer. She had later learned that 4 superpowers had intended to fight for White River City. Even she would struggle to win White River City's auction house with so many powerful opponents, yet the latest report stated that Zero Wing had emerged victorious. Moreover, its victory had been overwhelming. No matter how she looked at it, the situation didn't seem realistic. She had watched Zero Wing rise from the ground up personally, but she didn't understand how Zero Wing had become so powerful. For a moment, she even wondered if her subordinate had mistyped the victor's name to Zero Wing. Big Sis Rain, we've just received a message from the Great Pavilion Master. He wants to hold an elder meeting and requests your attendance. He says that it's related to Zero Wing, Blue Phoenix excitedly announced as she rushed into the room. I got it. Phoenix Rain could not help her bitter smile when she heard the message. She had wanted to help Zero Wing. She hadn't thought that it would help her instead. Or Empire, Crimson Flame Fortress. After a long period of development, the Crimson Flame Fortress's operations could rival that of a small NPC city. Including the NPC soldiers that guarded the fortress, it had become one of the safest rest areas in the Or Empire, and it was very close to the Or capital city. By using the fortress's teleportation function, players could reach the regional dungeon very quickly. As a result, the fortress had become exceptionally popular among players. However, tension dominated Blackwater's residence in the Crimson Flame Fortress. Jing Yang, who stood in the Vice Guild leader's office, was drenched in sweat. Zero Wing sure has a lot of experts. Xuanwu Chisa wore a faint smile as she finished reading Jing Yang's report. Neither joy nor sadness filled Xuanwu Chisa's voice, yet those who heard it would feel an extraordinarily frightening pressure. Even South Time, who stood behind Jing Yang, felt his legs wobble for a moment. Vice Guild Leader, Zero Wing's strength has truly exceeded our expectations. Do we still intend to put pressure on the guild after this? A blue-clad, elderly man, who radiated a much stronger aura than South Time's, asked. Zero Wing had enough apex experts to rival an ordinary superpower. Superpowers would have a very difficult time harassing the guild with their own apex experts. Zero Wing now had the strength to surround and defeat apex experts. On the off chance that its experts killed Blackwaters, the consequences would be severe. Apex experts were incredibly important assets to a superpower, and a single death could be dire for a superpower's development. Moreover, with the strength Xueqi had displayed thus far, Zero Wing wouldn't likely need to launch a large-scale offensive to deal with hostile apex experts. Xueqi alone would be more than enough to get the job done. The only option Blackwater had left involved mobilizing all of its apex combatants to wage a war of attrition against Zero Wing. However, doing so would not benefit either side. Blackwater's development would stagnate, and it would fall behind other superpowers. They had to avoid that method unless absolutely necessary. This was why the various superpowers rarely mobilized their apex experts to resolve conflicts with other superpowers, dispatching peak exerts, at most, to fight. Apex experts played a crucial role in acquiring powerful items, and superpowers couldn't afford any hindrances to their development. Normally, superpowers also had the option of an economic war, but now that Zero Wing had White River City's auction house, its financial prowess was likely unshakable. Of course, we are continuing, Xuanwu Chisa said as she eyed the blue-clad elder beside her. This is merely the start of Zero Wing's tragedy. Starlink has won auction houses in 3 NPC cities, including Dark Knight cities. This has substantially increased the guild's overall strength. With the Starlink Corporation's support, Starlink will only grow stronger. Although it failed to take White River City from Zero Wing, it won't let the smaller guild off the hook so easily. Understood. I'll make the necessary arrangements. The blue-clad elder bowed and left the room. After the blue-clad elder, Jing Yang, and the others left, Xueqi restarted the battle video of the competition for White River City's auction arena. At one point, she began to smile. Black flame, huh? Xueqi's eyes narrowed as she focused on the moment Feng had killed Sword Demon. Laughing, she said, "How interesting. The fact that you have grown your guild from nothing is truly amazing. It seems you have quite a few secrets, but turning a guild into a titan in God's domain isn't such an easy task. Show me how much you can grow." Meanwhile, joy dominated White River City's streets. Zero Wing's members celebrated throughout the city like it was New Year's Eve. Now that Zero Wing had control of the city's auction house, its position as Star Moon Kingdom's overlord was stable. Any power that picked a fight with the guild in Star Moon Kingdom would simply be asking for an early death. Although Zero Wing had only secured the management rights to White River City's auction house, White River City had the highest player population of any city in the kingdom. Merchant and lifestyle players frequently gathered here, and various products flowed through the city every day. Any power that wanted to develop in Star Moon Kingdom couldn't avoid visiting White River City's auction house. It was easy to imagine the consequences if a power were barred from the city's auction house. Because of this, Star Moon Kingdom's various powers forbade their members from provoking Zero Wing under any circumstances once Zero Wing had secured White River City's auction house. Any player that ignored the order would be instantly banished from the organization, and no power in Star Moon Kingdom would accept the banished player. Even the kingdom's dark players were a little intimidated by Zero Wing. Before this turn of events, they had been able to move about the kingdom without fear, but as time passed, the merchandise in White River City began to have greater influence on their daily lives in God's domain. Furthermore, if they wanted to fetch a good price for the items they sold, White River City's auction house was the best place to go. If they made it onto Zero Wing's blacklist, their relationship with the auction house would be severed. At the same time, Zero Wing's new position and influence in the kingdom attracted an unprecedented number of players who wanted to join the guild. In the past, Zero Wing's position as Star Moon Kingdom's overlord hadn't been infallible, but now, it was truly unshakable. Taking into account the guild's incredible performance in the auction arena, players who wanted to leech off of other success and those who wanted to improve their own strength swarmed to join Zero Wing. Carrot. In less than an hour after the auction arena's conclusion, Zero Wing had received more than 200,000 applications. Many among them were experts that could reach the trial tower's 5th floor, and some were even half-step refinement realm experts. It astonished Gentle Snow and Aqua Rose. First-rate guilds offered high prices and instant promotions to core member to recruit half-step refinement realm experts. Yet many of these experts approached Zero Wing, wanting to join even if they had to start out as normal members. However, the situation didn't surprise Feng. Zero Wing was only a step away from becoming a superpower now, and it was normal to receive membership applications from half-step refinement realm experts. Moreover, the threshold Zero Wing needed to cross to become a superpower wasn't like what other first-rate guilds faced. Other guilds typically lacked sufficient peak and apex experts when trying to become a superpower, but Zero Wing only lacked certain developmental aspects. Growing the guild was much easier to accomplish than nurturing peak and apex experts. Of course, Zero Wing didn't actually have any real peak or apex experts. The players the guild had shown off in the auction arena had been forcibly created through powerful weapons, equipment, and skills. However, with the Lost Town and Zero Wing's many combat techniques, the guild wasn't far behind the various superpowers in its ability to nurture experts. Moreover, as the workshop perfected the facilities in Zero Wing's main headquarters, it would only be a matter of time before Zero Wing's methods were even more effective than the various superpowers. While Gentle Snow and Aqua Rose organized the guild's new members, Feng made his way to White River City Hall. Even after securing the management rights to NPC City's auction houses in the past, the various powers had only treated these auction houses as important income sources. They had failed to recognize the management rights' true value. Someone had only discovered the true value of NPC auction houses after more than a year had passed since the auction arena system had been introduced. When this discovery had gone public, many powers had hated themselves for not investigating NPC auction houses thoroughly. If they had paid more attention, they would have been able to elevate their development to a whole new level. What the various powers had failed to discover was the fact that NPC auction houses could be linked with player-constructed auction houses. The process of doing so was troublesome, but compared to the potential harvest, it wasn't worth mentioning. After waiting in the city hall for some time, a level 150, Tier 3 senior administrator approached Xueqi. Lord Count, I apologize for the long wait. The magistrate is in his study. Please follow me. The senior administrator respectfully addressed Xueqi. All right. Xueqi nodded. He then followed the senior administrator to the staircase that led to the top floor. Chapter 2104. Proper use of the auction house. Under the senior administrator's lead, Xueqi arrived at a quiet and elegant study. The study was not particularly large. It had only 2 bookshelves, which were filled with dilapidated books. Some of the books didn't even have a cover. At a glance, one could tell that these books were considerably old. Some of them even exuded a faint trace of divine might. In God's domain, every item capable of exuding divine might was extraordinarily valuable as past possessions of gods and having been bathed in the aura of gods for long periods. Among items that exuded divine might, books were especially valuable, since they recorded either a topic that interested gods or knowledge left behind by gods. Some even recorded hints and instructions on how to become a Tier 6 god. Hence, even a useless book that exuded divine might could sell for thousands of gold on the market. Their value easily rivaled an ordinary piece of epic equipment. Meanwhile, more than 50 of such books were sitting on the 2 bookshelves. So, this is the study of White River City's City Hall? Xueqi was astonished as he gazed at the 2 bookshelves. From an ordinary player's perspective, there was nothing special about a magistrate meeting a player in his study. After all, the magistrate would not always remain in one location inside the city hall. However, what most people didn't know was that magistrates normally wouldn't ever meet with players in their studies. Only the manager of an NPC city's auction house would be allowed to visit the study of the respective city's city hall. One could say that this was a special privilege of auction house managers. Any other player would most likely never set foot in a city hall study. Tier 6 god-ranked players were no exception. One could also say that a city hall study was the most fortified location inside an NPC city. This wasn't because the study was protected by amazing magic arrays, but because it was located in a special space. Like an otherworld, unless one gained permission to access it, even Tier 6 gods wouldn't be able to enter the study. At this time, Magistrate Weissman was sitting behind an office desk and reading a book made of pure gold under the sunlight shining through the window behind him. Compared to the previous time Xueqi met Weissman, the current Weissman was already a level 200, Tier 5 Grand Wizard. This could be considered one of the benefits of White River City being one of the first NPC cities to get promoted in God's domain. With a Tier 5 NPC guarding White River City, even Tier 4 players would not dare act rampantly inside the city. The security level of the city was on an entirely different level compared to that of ordinary NPC cities. Players could develop themselves here without worrying about small incidents ruining all their investments in the city. You're here. Do you have some business with me? Weissman asked as he looked at Xueqi with a friendly smile. Due to his promotion in tiers, Weissman's intellect had received further improvement. The NPC was now capable of acting much more like an ordinary human being. He even perfectly suppressed his aura. If one did not use an identification skill on Weissman, they would most likely treat him as an ordinary old man. Lord Magistrate, I wish to make the city more prosperous, so I want to link White River City's auction house with the auction house of another city. I hope I can gain your permission to do so, Xueqi answered. An auction house was an important economic pillar for a city. An auction house's development was a city's development, and the prosperity of an auction house was a city's prosperity. In the past, the powers merely treated the NPC auction houses they acquired as an ATM and the key to controlling an NPC city. They failed to understand that NPC auction houses were actually a tool for hastening the development of guild towns. This function had only been discovered more than a year after the auction arena system's introduction into the game. A year. With the popularity and income that an NPC auction house brought, 1 year was more than enough to elevate a guild town into an advanced city. However, as the various powers failed to discover this function, even more than 2 years after God's Domain's launch in the past, there hadn't been a single advanced guild city in the game. Even the existing intermediate cities back then had still been far from becoming advanced cities. Without the help of an NPC auction house, even 3 to 5 years of development wouldn't be enough to elevate an intermediate city to an advanced city. Guild towns and cities were a guild's foundation for development in God's domain. Meanwhile, there was an enormous difference between guild towns and cities of different ranks, especially when an intermediate city was promoted into an advanced city. Although the change was mostly quantitative, the difference was massive. Moreover, some special constructions that assisted players in their development could be constructed only in advanced cities. Hence, when the various powers received news about this function, they had all been filled with regret. Had they known about this function early on, they would have been able to elevate their guild's development speed and the standard of players in their territory to a whole new level. This was particularly true for the standard of players. As players reached higher levels, the maps inside kingdoms and empires would become inadequate for players seeking to improve themselves. This improvement wasn't limited to levels. It referred to clearing the Tier 3 promotion quest as well. Level 100 was a massive turning point for players in God's domain. Not only were level 100 monsters much more difficult to handle than level 99 monsters, but it was also the minimum level at which players could get promoted to Tier 3. Meanwhile, the precondition for promotion to Tier 3 was development in neutral maps. However, as luck would have it, level 100 plus neutral maps were extremely dangerous, so dangerous that even Tier 2 experts would struggle to survive in them. Most importantly, the environment in these neutral maps was extremely severe. Low ambient mana, like in the Witch's Hill, was only the least of the environmental challenges in these level 100 plus neutral maps. If players wanted to have an easier time developing in these level 100 plus neutral maps, they needed to rely on the support of a guild city. Developing in a level 100 plus neutral map was akin to walking through a barren desert with a guild city serving as an oasis. However, proper player development in level 100 plus neutral maps depended largely on the rank of the guild city. In level 100 plus neutral maps, a basic city was only the baseline for survival for Tier 2 players. That was right. Survival. Basic cities merely protected players from dying from unexpected events. Only after reaching the intermediate standard would a guild city be able to provide players with a better life in neutral maps. Guild cities that had reached the advanced standard could provide players with comfortable lives even in level 100 plus neutral maps. Tier 3 promotion would also become considerably easier, which was the reason why the various powers of God's domain had been so desperate to obtain an advanced city of their own in the past. If a power could upgrade its guild city to the advanced standard early on, the speed of conversion to Tier 3 and the number of players converted would increase significantly. Said power could then widen the gap between itself and other powers. This was also the reason why Xueqi was so desperate to secure White River City's auction house. After all was said and done, superpowers were still superpowers. Zero Wing could not hope to match the resources and manpower they had on hand. Although everyone believed that Zero Wing was only one small step away from becoming a superpower, they failed to realize that a gigantic gap remained between Zero Wing and an actual superpower. Moreover, as more time passed, this gap would only become increasingly obvious, the so-called snowball effect. Currently, even the best players in God's domain had just started their journey in Tier 2, so the difference might not be so obvious. However, after players reached Tier 3, the gap would be glaring. If he did not set up a sturdy foundation for Zero Wing now, then once the various superpowers of God's domain started obtaining Tier 3 players, he might be able to protect himself, but Zero Wing might not be able to defend itself against superpowers. Link with the auction house of another city? Weissman put down the book in his hands and entered deep thought when he heard Xueqi's words. Before long, he said, "It's not exactly impossible, but this matter will be very difficult to accomplish. If you fail, you'll have to pay a considerable price. Are you truly willing to accept this task?" "Yes." Xueqi nodded seriously. He had long since known about this point, as he wouldn't have visited Weissman without preparation. "Which town or city would you choose?" Weissman asked. "Stone Forest Town." Xueqi replied. The Witch's Hill Zero Wing City was built in was a precious leveling ground. He couldn't possibly move Zero Wing City to a neutral map. Stone Forest Town, however, was a different story. The Stone Claw Mountains the town was built in was already starting to lose popularity among players. Moreover, Stone Forest Town was already an advanced town and only a step away from becoming a basic city. He naturally had to prioritize its development. Although linking an NPC auction house with a guild town's auction house was slightly more difficult than doing so for a guild city's auction house, the difficulty was only on the standard of an epic team quest. To Xueqi's current self, completing such a quest would be no problem at all. All right, as White River City's magistrate, I will grant you this authority. Here are the tasks you need to complete. I hope you can succeed. Weissman said as he took out a parchment and handed it to Xueqi. Meanwhile, the moment Xueqi accepted the parchment, a system notification entered his ears. System. You have accepted the inferior legendary quest, Road of Prosperity. Chapter 2105. Road to Tier 3. An inferior legendary quest? Xueqi was stunned when he saw the system notification. As far as he could remember, the quest to link an NPC auction house to a guild cities had only neared epic rank. Even if it were slightly more difficult to accomplish, the quest shouldn't be more difficult than an epic team quest. He had never heard of an inferior legendary ranked version. Although there was only one rank between inferior legendary quests and epic quests, the actual difficulty difference was massive. This was like the difference between peak and apex experts. Even apex experts would face extreme risks when completing an inferior legendary quest, and that was with the support of a superpower. Without a superpower behind them, completing an inferior legendary quest would require heaven-defying luck. During Xueqi's brief moment of shock, he received another system notification. System. Congratulations! You are the first player to activate the Road to Prosperity in God's domain. There will be no penalties for failing the quest. Upon quest completion, you will be awarded an additional Peak Construction Design or Gold Town Promotion Order. A Peak Construction Design or Gold Town Promotion Order. Xueqi began to grow excited as he read this second notification. Both the Peak Construction Design and the Gold Town Promotion Order were painfully difficult to acquire in God's domain. Either of these items was easily as valuable as a fragmented legendary item. Any peak construction could easily attract a flood of players, increasing a city's popularity. Peak constructions were also required to promote an advanced city to a main city. A guild city could only truly become a guild's main headquarters after becoming a main city, which even individual Tier 5 players would find difficult to take down. To destroy a main city, one would need a group of Tier 5 players or a Tier 6 God-ranked player. This was also why only guilds with a main city were considered true first-rate guilds. First-rate guilds generally had quite a few Tier 5 players under their command, and with the home ground advantage, these Tier 5 players could exhibit far greater combat power than ordinary Tier 5 players. Hence, even the various superpowers had invested a lot of time and effort to destroy a first-rate guild's main city in the past. Some superpowers had even spent 2 or 3 months trying to destroy a first-rate guild's main city. As for the Gold Town Promotion Order, it allowed players to promote an advanced town to a basic city unconditionally. Every superpower dreamed of commanding a basic city at this stage of the game. Not only would a basic city provide a stable source of income, but it would also allow its ruling superpower to control more territory. At the same time, a basic city was the basis for survival in level 100+ neutral maps. God's domain had plenty of level 100+ neutral maps, and every one of them had its own characteristics and resources. Occupying one of these neutral maps would certainly benefit a guild's members as they grew stronger. God's domain's current powers desperately needed both the Peak Construction Design and the Gold Town Promotion Order. Even though it would still be some time before players reached level 100, much would need to be done before they could explore level 100 neutral maps. Many powers in the past had only begun to prepare after players had reached level 90, and by then, it had been too late. Ideally, powers should prepare to explore level 100 neutral maps once players reached level 80. Players would need potions and items that would help counter the harsh environments players would encounter in neutral maps, for example. To amass these potions and items, the various powers would need to improve their lifestyle player standards. They would also need to grind for recipes and designs. If a power only began to prepare for this expansion after players reached level 90, it wouldn't be ready in time, and superpowers were no exception. Its development in level 100 neutral maps would stagnate, and the process of elevating its expert players to Tier 3 would be affected. Zero Wing's foundations were still flimsy. Hence, Xueqi needed to prepare for exploring level 100 neutral maps as soon as possible. After all, after reaching Tier 2, players would need about the same amount of time for each level up before level 100. It only seemed like players' leveling speed decreased as they reached higher levels due to increased PvP encounters, which in turn resulted in more deaths than necessary. In addition, top-tier weapons and equipment became more difficult to acquire. Thinking up to this point, Xueqi promptly unfurled the parchment Weissman had given him. The parchment listed all the conditions that he would need to fulfill. Once he met these conditions, White River City's auction house would link with the auction house in Stone Forest Town. As expected of an inferior legendary quest. These conditions are absurd. Xueqi frowned as he read the parchment. To put it simply, he needed to obtain 100 units of 7 Luminaries crystal and complete one hero-ranked crusade quest. Although the quest only had 2 conditions, fulfilling both would even be a challenge for the various superpowers. The various superpowers likely didn't even know what a hero crusade quest was. A hero crusade quest was also known as a kingdom crusade quest. Even an entire kingdom would struggle to complete such a quest, so they were usually commissioned through the Adventurers Association. In the past, even the various superpowers had considered hero crusade quests absolute nightmares. In the past, first-rate guilds had been powerless when it came to hero crusade quests, and the various superpowers had sacrificed tens of thousands of expert players to complete them. Even Apex experts had died multiple times during the quest. Now, the system wanted him to complete one such quest just to connect 2 auction houses. Obtaining 100 units of 7 Luminaries crystal wasn't particularly difficult for Xueqi. After all, Zero Wing had already begun to explore the Tower of Time. Thus far, the guild had collected more than 50 units of 7 Luminaries crystal. If he sent Cola and the other main force members to the tower, acquiring the rest of the required 7 Luminaries crystals wouldn't be overly difficult. The Hero Crusade quest was the real problem. Ouroboros had once accepted a Hero Crusade quest when players had been around level 70. Their target had been the Lord of Fire in an ancient secret land. I can probably give it a go. After giving the matter some thought, Xueqi recalled the Hero Crusade quests in Star Moon Kingdom during his previous life. Of those he could remember, the only one he was confident of Zero Wing completing was the crusade against the Lord of Fire. Although Ouroboros had failed to defeat the Lord of Fire, the main reason for its defeat had been insufficient fire resistance. Ouroboros' members hadn't been able to withstand the Lord of Fire's attacks at all. A foreign superpower had arrived to hunt down the boss only after players had reached level 100. The achievement had sparked a huge commotion in Star Moon Kingdom at the time. Players could only complete a Hero Crusade quest once, and once it had been completed, it would vanish from God's domain forever. As long as a guild completed a Hero Crusade quest, it would be awarded a significant amount of guild popularity, which would attract more NPC nobles and even royalty to commission quests. A guild could even earn the appropriate deeds to become a territory lord, although trying to reach that rank was extremely difficult. After considering the matter for a moment, Xueqi decided to hunt down the Lord of Fire. Other powers might find it struggle to amass enough fire resistance to raid the Lord of Fire, but it wasn't an issue for Xueqi and his guild. He had already raided the Flame Demon King and obtained the Flame Demon's crown, a piece of top-tier fire resistance equipment, after all. Furthermore, Zero Wing was far stronger than Ouroboros had been. With the help of Master Fire Resistance potions, raiding the Lord of Fire was definitely possible for the guild. As Xueqi left the city hall and was about to head to the candlelight trading firm to prepare for the crusade quest, Aqua Rose contacted him. Guild leader, something major has just happened. A moment ago, Starlink made a move and invited every core member in our guild to join it. It is offering us 3 times what Zero Wing is paying, and it has poached a group of advanced lifestyle players from Candlelight. Starlink has started selling weapons and equipment for cred, causing our sales to plummet, Aqua Rose hurriedly reported. Everyone in the guild is talking about it. I guess Starlink finally gave in and is trying to suppress us with its financial power? Xueqi could not help but laugh. How can you laugh at a time like this, guild leader? We are already tight on credits. Now that Starlink is trying to sabotage us, many of the guild's members are growing concerned. If our people start to leave the guild, our development will likely stagnate, Aqua Rose said, exasperated at Xueqi's reaction. I get it. Notify Melancholic and Yulan. Tell them to reduce our prices in the Dark Knight Empire and purchase the Empire's specialty materials at a high price. Since Starlink wants to cause trouble in Star Moon Kingdom, we'll do the same in the Dark Knight Empire. Xueqi calmly decided. Chapter 2106. Advanced Authority. Aqua Rose was stunned when she heard Xueqi's orders. Guild leader, are we really doing this? Aqua Rose hurriedly asked after snapping out of her daze. We're short on coins and credits right now because of the guild's development. I'm afraid that we won't last more than 2 days if we go through with this. Zero Wing had secured White River City's auction house, which significantly increased the guild's income. But the battle had also tremendously elevated the guild's fame, which had attracted more recruits and increased the guild's member count. Overall, the guild's funds were still stretched thin. Meanwhile, a large-scale price war wouldn't yield results quickly. It could even backfire on Zero Wing. Starlink was its opponent this time, and the superpower had immense financial strength. Moreover, Zero Wing would be attacking Starlink's home turf. Even when Zero Wing's coffers had been overflowing, it still hadn't been a match for Starlink. Not even superpowers like Unyielding Soul or Crimson Emperor dared to engage in a financial war against Starlink. How many coins can we save each day after including the income from White River City's auction house? Xueqi asked. After deducting the guild's necessary expenditures and including the funds we have on hand, we should be able to save around 35,000 gold per day, Aqua Rose said with a bitter smile. 35,000 gold was unquestionably a huge sum to current first-rate guilds. Many of them dreamed of saving so much in a single day. As guilds continued to develop, they encountered more necessary expenditures. Trying to wage a price war against a superpower on its home turf with just 35,000 gold per day was a joke. That money would be gone in 2 days, at most. Even if Zero Wing was generating more income each day, the guild could only afford to maintain its financial attack for around 5 days. Any longer and the war would affect the guild's development. That should be just barely enough. Xueqi mimicked Aqua's faint smile after giving the matter some thought. That's enough. For a moment, Aqua Rose wondered if she had misheard Xueqi. Either that, or she had accidentally told him the wrong numbers, stating the guild's net income as 350,000 rather than 35,000. That's enough. Just inform Melancholic and Yulan and tell them to see to the necessary preparations in the Dark Knight Empire, Xueqi said, nodding. He then disconnected the call and continued toward the Candlelight trading firm to prepare for the Lord of Fire raid. A few days ago, he wouldn't have been confident enough to start a price war with Starlink in the Dark Knight Empire. But he had already purchased 500 stamina gemstones from the 4-star wandering merchant Zal. The various major powers desperately needed stamina gemstones since they'd all started to explore neutral maps. Unfortunately, these neutral maps didn't have guild towns or cities yet where players could rest. Moreover, the various large guilds couldn't transfer their guild towns to these neutral maps yet, which meant that exploration relied entirely on players' strength and stamina. Meanwhile, the wealthier a neutral map was, the hasher its environment would be. As a result, players expended more stamina than normal when exploring these maps. Players would even consume stamina while standing still in some neutral maps, and even if they sat down to rest, their stamina recovery would only be enough to nullify the passive consumption rate. Players simply couldn't survive in these maps for long. Although there were some potions that aided in stamina recovery on the market, they were extremely rare. The various major powers usually saved these potions for their members, rarely selling them. Take Zero Wing for example. Although Zero Wing could brew the exotic stamina potion, it only had 10 players that were capable of producing it, yet the guild had more than 500,000 members. After deducting the guild's needs, very few exotic stamina potions were left that could be sold on the market. This predicament only increased the stamina gemstone's value. First, the stamina gemstone did not have a set duration. It would not disappear after a certain period of use. Second, it did not have a level limit. Hence, players could use the stamina gemstone throughout their careers in God's domain. If players equipped 3 stamina gemstones, they wouldn't have to worry about stamina consumption when exploring neutral maps below level 100. Because of this, the various major powers had gone crazy for stamina gemstones in the past, each easily selling for 300 gold in an auction. While Xueqi prepared all sorts of fire resistance equipment and potions, players throughout Star Moon Kingdom had discovered Starlink's assault on Zero Wing, and a commotion erupted across the kingdom. Starlink has finally made its move. I knew Starlink couldn't take the embarrassment of losing to Zero Wing lying down. Even though Zero Wing has many experts, the competition between the various powers is one of finances. How can Zero Wing possibly compete with Starlink without any backers? Starlink is pretty impressive though. It's actually poaching Zero Wing's members by offering to triple their salaries. I've heard that several hundred Zero Wing members have already left to join Starlink. Moreover, a large number of them are advanced lifestyle players. This will likely wound the candlelight trading firm. I would be tempted as well. After all, they get to join a superpower and earn 3 times their normal salary. That's not all Starlink is doing. I've heard that it started to buy Star Moon Kingdom's materials at a high price, too. It is also selling similar products to the Candlelight trading firm at a much lower price. As a result, Candlelight's player traffic has decreased. Zero Wing's in trouble now. It has just secured White River City's auction house after fighting so hard, and just as it has gained the funds to start on the path toward becoming a superpower, Starlink had jumped in and made such a move. Zero Wing's development will likely stagnate. Sure enough, superpowers shouldn't be casually provoked. By this point, Star Moon Kingdom's players had gained a better understanding of superpowers' wealth. Although they had recently held an optimistic view of Zero Wing's future, hoping that Zero Wing could emerge victorious from a price war with Starlink was unrealistic. Meanwhile, a gorgeous woman in dark purple robes entered one of White River City's advanced bars. As soon as she spotted the middle-aged man wearing pitch-black leather armor at the bar, she hurried up to him. "Commander, I've just received a message from the Seven Sins. Not only has Starlink successfully secured 3 auction houses, but it has also become an advanced member in the Secret Chamber of Commerce. As an advanced member, the first thing Starlink did was use its authority to hold an advanced union. It looks like Starlink is trying to kick Zero Wing out of secret," Iluafe immediately reported. "An advanced union?" Yen Tianqing could not help but shake his head and sigh as he said, "Sure enough, hoping that a guild with no background can become a superpower is a fool's dream. Since that is the case, let's return to the Black Dragon Empire." Within the Secret Chamber of Commerce, there were 2 levels of membership: basic and advanced. Not only did advanced members enjoy greater authority and have more access to the chamber's resources, but they could also hold an advanced union to propose changes to the chamber's other advanced members. As long as more than half of the advanced members agreed to the proposal, it would be enacted immediately. One of the potential proposals included expelling basic members from the chamber. However, becoming an advanced member in the Secret Chamber of Commerce was extremely difficult. Not even all super guilds qualified for that level of membership, and Starlink's success in doing so was certainly shocking. Since Starlink was responsible for the proposal, Secret's advanced members would likely approve Zero Wing's removal to avoid provoking the superpower and prevent another from rising in God's domain. Now, not even the Secret Pavilion's objection could save Zero Wing from its fate. It was easy to imagine what end awaited Zero Wing if it lost access to the Secret Chamber of Commerce's sales channels. Xueqi, who busied himself in the candlelight trading firm, received a frustrated notification from Yuan Tianxin, as well. After today, Zero Wing was no longer a member of the Secret Chamber of Commerce, and all dealings it had with the chamber would be cancelled immediately. Guild leader Black Flame, this decision is a result of the Advanced Union's agreement. Although the Secret Pavilion voted against it, the 5 other advanced members voted for the proposal. There was nothing the pavilion could do, Yuan Tianxin said apologetically. "It's fine. It's the rules after all. Although, I have to thank the pavilion for voting in Zero Wing's favor," Xueqi said, chuckling. "Although Zero Wing is no longer part of the Secret Chamber of Commerce, if your guild needs anything, the Secret Pavilion can help with small matters. Just contact me if you need anything in the future," Yuan Tianxin sincerely offered. "Thanks." Xueqi nodded appreciatively. As Xueqi learned of Zero Wing's banishment from the Secret Chamber of Commerce, news of the matter spread throughout Star Moon Kingdom, causing an uproar. Nobody would have imagined that Secret would annex Zero Wing without a second thought. With this, Zero Wing would find it even more difficult to survive Starlink's economic suppression. "Zero Wing, didn't you want to play? I'll give you my full attention this time." Lu Xinglua, in the distant Dark Knight Empire, laughed when he received the latest report on Zero Wing. Previously, he hadn't had the time to deal with Zero Wing, but now that Starlink has secured its position as the Dark Knight Empire's overlord, neither Unyielding Soul nor Crimson Empire was a match for its prowess in the Empire. Now that he didn't have to worry about Starlink's position in the Empire, he had the time to punish Zero Wing for angering Starlink. Meanwhile, Melancholic Smile and Yulan had just arrived in one of the 100 Flower Palaces shops in Dark Knight City that Zero Wing had taken over. Guild leader, all of Candlelight's shops in the Empire have been stocked with stamina gemstones and exotic stamina potions. We can start selling them at any time. Melancholic Smile reported after calling Xueqi. Good. Begin the operation. Xueqi commanded. It's about time we teach Starlink a lesson. Chapter 2107. Foolish to the Extreme. Melancholic Smile and Yulan went to work the moment Xueqi gave the command. In Zero Wing's name, they announced their intent to purchase the Dark Knight Empire's specialty materials at a high price and sell common goods at a low price. The post caused a commotion throughout the Empire the moment it went public. The Dark Knight Empire's players found the situation unbelievable. Insane. Zero Wing has gone insane. What? Is Zero Wing really starting a price war against Starlink? Practically everyone in the Dark Knight Empire knew of Zero Wing by this point. The guild had, after all, helped the 100 Flowers Palace resist Starlink's assault. It was no secret that Starlink had begun to use its financial prowess to suppress Zero Wing shortly after the auction arena had ended. However, no one had expected Zero Wing to pull a move like this in the Dark Knight Empire so soon after Starlink's actions in Starmoon Kingdom. Clearly, Zero Wing was retaliating. The news reached the Empire's various powers at light speed, and they all found Zero Wing's actions utterly astonishing. What are Zero Wing's people thinking? Are they unaware that Starlink has already secured Dark Knight City's auction house? Crimson Heart, the 100 Flowers Palace's first vice-guild leader, said, flabbergasted. Starlink had already solidified its position as the Empire's overlord, and not even Unyielding Soul or Crimson Emperor would dare engage the superpower in a financial war. Moreover, Starlink had secured 2 other NPC auction houses. Its new financial strength was unimaginable. I've heard that Zero Wing's members have become jittery due to Starlink suppression. Maybe Zero Wing is trying to raise morale and unite its members, Cleansed Rue commented. In her opinion, this was Zero Wing's only option. A guild's morale and unity were extremely important. If the guild were fractured, it would only be a matter of time before it crumbled. Even so, this is just playing with fire. This has basically announced Zero Wing's intentions to fight Starlink. If Zero Wing loses this financial war, it will only suffer more, Crimson Heart said. Moreover, economic warfare is very taxing on a guild. This isn't a field battle. It is a pure competition of wealth and resources. War weapons are useless here. Cleansed Rue fell silent after listening to Crimson Heart's reasoning. As Crimson Heart had said, fighting a price war would hinder a guild's operations, and the consequences of losing a war like this were far worse than losing a field war. While a guild could endure multiple defeats in a field war, a single loss in a financial war could force a guild to the brink of disbandment. Even worse, a guild would still suffer severe losses even if it won. To put it simply, there were no winners in an economic war. The 100 Flowers Palace wasn't the only guild in the Dark Knight Empire that Zero Wing's actions had confused. Unyielding Soul also discussed the situation. Zero Wing has gone too far this time. Mu Chang could not help but sigh as he read the discussions on the Dark Knight Empire's official forums. Grandpa, Zero Wing has a gold mine like Zero Wing City, as well as White River City's auction house. Overall, it still has frightening financial strength. Starlink won't come out unscathed from a financial war with Zero Wing, either, Mu Lingsha said. Other guilds might not recognize Zero Wing City's value, but as a superpower, Unyielding Soul was very aware of it. Aside from the daily entry fees, the teleportation services the city offered to players who wanted to visit the Otherworld Gate generated astonishing profits. The Otherworld Gate had many precious treasures to offer players, and the leveling speed in the area was incredible. Even players from Starmoon Kingdom's neighbors had begun to head toward the Otherworld Gate to level, not to mention the Kingdom's players. The city's teleportation services likely earned Zero Wing as much money as White River City's auction house. _U_E severely underestimating Starlink. Don't forget that Starlink has taken control of Dark Knight Carrot House. In other words, it holds the city's economic lifeline in its palm, Mu Ching said, shaking his head. A single word from Starlink is enough to determine who can enter the auction house and who cannot. Furthermore, Starlink controls 3 total NPC auction houses. Even if one of the auction houses stops generating income, Starlink won't suffer for it. Starlink's influence over the Empire's players is leaps and bounds beyond Zero Wing's. Do you think that everyone would risk provoking Starlink for a little extra profit? After all was said and done, Zero Wing was not a superpower. Ignoring background, there was a massive difference between the two guilds in terms of the number of auction houses under their control. The main reason that Starlink dared to provoke Zero Wing in Star Moon Kingdom was the fact that Zero Wing only controlled one NPC auction house. If Zero Wing prohibited Starlink's customers from using its auction house, it would sever its own lifeline. However, the same couldn't be said for Starlink. This was the difference between these guilds' foundations. It was extremely foolish for Zero Wing to think that it could use Starlink's tactics against it. Trying to mimic the superpower suppression would only make Zero Wing's death even more miserable. "I'll go and warn Zero Wing right away," Mu Lingsha said. "It's too late," Mu Chung said, sighing. Zero Wing has already announced its intentions in this war using its own name. Every player in the Dark Knight Empire and Star Moon Kingdom knows what's happening. If Zero Wing gives up now, not only would the guild appear weak, but its players' unity would also shatter. Dark Knight City, Starlink's residence. Guild leader, everyone's discussing Zero Wing's declaration of war. Should we take further actions against the guild? Don Webb asked Lu Xinglua. Of course. Inform the public that whoever dares to sell the Empire's specialty materials to Zero Wing should give up any hope of setting foot in Dark Knight City's auction house ever again. Laughing, Lu Xinglua continued, "I want to see just how Zero Wing plans to play this out." Understood. Don Webb promptly bowed and left the room. Dark Knight City's business district bustled with activity, and despite the late hour, players crowded the streets. As the Dark Knight Empire's imperial capital, the various adventurer teams and guilds members gathered here. One could easily find level 64 expert players with a casual glance, and there were quite a few experts in level 60 fine gold equipment. The scene would be impossible to find in an ordinary NPC city. However, the Empire's various powers hadn't stationed their members in Dark Knight City because it was the Empire's capital, but because it was a hub for the Dark Knight Empire's merchant players. This ensured that the city had more resources than anywhere else in the Empire. If the Dark Knight Empire had something good to offer, it could be found in Dark Knight City. Items that were nearly impossible to find in other NPC cities were commonplace here, and the majority of these items flowed through Dark Knight City's auction house. Many players had become famous or wealthy overnight because they had chanced upon treasures selling for far less than they were worth in the city's auction house. Due to Starlink's ban on Zero Wing, no one was in a rush to visit the Candlelight trading firm's shop in the business district. Very few players were willing to enter the shop since everyone was afraid of being banned from the city's auction house as well. Meanwhile, Melancholic Smile and Yulan were dumbfounded as they stood in Candlelight's empty shop. They were purchasing materials at a 30% markup and selling commonly used goods for 30% less than market value. Yet only a small number of players had visited Candlelight shops in the Empire since they had made their announcement over an hour ago. Anxious, Melancholic Smile contacted Xueqi and asked, "Guild leader, what should we do? Because of Starlink's ban, the players who visit Candlelight here only buy our low-priced goods. We're losing money and gaining nothing. We won't be able to affect Starlink's economy at this rate." "Starlink has banned us?" Xueqi laughed. "How quick of it!" "Guild leader, we're losing money here, yet you can still laugh?" Melancholic Smile asked, exasperated. "Now that Starlink has banned us, we can take action," Xueqi said. "Reveal the exotic stamina potions and stamina gemstones. Any player that wants to buy the exotic stamina potions can do so with the Empire's specialty materials. Auction off the stamina gemstones but only to players who sell us 1 gold of specialty materials. Hopefully, Starlink keeps its word and goes through with the ban." "I'll get it done," Melancholic Smile said, a joyful smile lighting up her face. Chapter 2108. Dark Knight Empire Shaken. Although Melancholic Smile wasn't a combat player, she understood the exotic stamina potions and stamina gemstones value perfectly. Zero Wing's exchange prices for the exotic stamina potions rose each day, and now, not even the guild's basic elite members qualified to purchase the potions. The exotic stamina potions were only available to those who had been guild members for a long time, significantly contributed to the guild, and were advanced elite members. Moreover, advanced elite members were limited to 1 bottle every 3 days. Even so, the guild's daily supply wasn't enough to maintain its stock. It was clear how important the exotic stamina potions were to combat players. However, Melancholic Smile didn't find the situation unreasonable. Current players had moved beyond grinding within kingdoms and empires' borders. Most players ran toward neutral maps as soon as they were a high enough level. Not only did neutral maps offer more opportunities, but leveling in these maps also proved faster than the alternative. This was a part of God's domain's balance. Players wouldn't earn much if they developed in save areas, but if they took a risk, they could reap more rewards. The exotic stamina potions were a large part of the reason that Zero Wings members had reached level 50 so quickly. The stamina gemstones were even more impressive. Although they weren't as powerful as the exotic stamina potions, they were everlasting. Moreover, the stamina gemstone would only become more effective as players reached higher levels. Players could use the gemstones forever, and they were a treasure that could give the various major powers a significant advantage over their competitors. Melancholic Smile immediately ordered a subordinate to set up a new counter for the exotic stamina potions. She also set up a small cabinet beside the counter to display the stamina gemstones and the necessary qualifications to bid for them in the auction. The moment these new features appeared in the shop, they attracted the few visiting players' attention. Quick look! There's a new counter. A new product. The independent players browsing the shop weren't from the Dark Knight Empire. They were merely visiting Dark Knight City to purchase and sell items. Hence, they didn't particularly care about Starlink's ban. Their base of operations wasn't in the Empire, and if they couldn't purchase items from Dark Knight City's auction house, they could simply visit an auction house in another empire. Since the Candlelight trading firm was selling items below market price, they couldn't miss this opportunity to make a profit. So what if Zero Wing is pushing out a new product? Zero Wing overestimates itself if it thinks it can defeat Starlink in the Dark Knight Empire. An assassin from Starlink, disguised as an independent player, said disdainfully as he looked at the new counter. As far as he was concerned, his superior's orders to watch Candlelight was unnecessary. Even if the Dark Knight Empire's various major powers had 10 times the courage they currently displayed, they wouldn't dare offend Starlink for a little profit. Trying to counter Starlink's influence in the Empire's market by relying on independent players was simply a dream. Many of the Dark Knight Empire's precious materials could only be obtained with a certain degree of strength, and generally, only the various adventurer teams and guilds were strong enough. But as the Starlink assassin entertained such thoughts, someone's exclamation reached his ears. Crap! The exotic stamina potion. This shop is actually selling exotic stamina potions. With those few words, the first-floor hall fell silent. Almost every customer turned toward the counter at the same time, a hint of madness flashing in their eyes. They immediately dashed toward the counter. In less than 10 seconds, every customer inside the shop had crowded around the exotic stamina potions counter. It really is the exotic stamina potion. For real. Zero Wing is actually selling this here. Crap. You can only purchase it for the Dark Knight Empire's specialty materials. The independent players panted a little when they saw the potions. Boss, give me 10 bottles. I want 20. Boss, I want every exotic stamina potion you have. After a brief moment of shock, the several hundred independent players in the shop frantically shouted their orders for the exotic stamina potions. If the system's rules hadn't protected the counter, they likely would have tried to destroy it and steal the potions within. Meanwhile, Melancholic Smile, who watched from the second floor, was stupefied. When Candlelight sold the potion in Starmoon Kingdom, the kingdom's players had merely been surprised. Nobody had ever reacted like these independent players. They all seemed as if they had found a priceless treasure that was worth killing over. However, if Xueqi saw this, he wouldn't be overly surprised. Empires not only had more resources than kingdoms, but their competition was also far more intense. Kingdoms' players couldn't even imagine how fierce the competition was in an empire. Furthermore, items that could increase players' stamina recovery were extremely rare in God's domain. Normally, independent players had no access to such items. While the players in the shop made a fuss over the exotic stamina potions, some noticed the cabinet next to the counter. Again, they expressed their shock. Stamina gemstone? God's domain actually has such an item? If I equipped 3 or 4 of these gemstones, I wouldn't have to worry about surviving in God's domain's maps in the future. This won't do. Even if I go bankrupt, I have to get these stamina gemstones. Everyone stared at the crystal-clear stamina gemstones in the cabinet with bloodshot eyes. Naturally, these players paid no heed to the participation qualifications and the auction's minimum 100 gold bid. They immediately contacted their friends to borrow the necessary funds. The exotic stamina potions might be very important, but compared to the stamina gemstone, the potions were insignificant. With the stamina gemstones, players could treat neutral maps like their own backyards, hunting for more opportunities than other players. News of the Candlelight trading firm's exotic stamina potions spread like wildfire. Not only did it reach every corner of Dark Knight City almost instantly, but players also began to discuss the gemstones on the Empire's official forums. Is Zero Wing insane? It's actually selling such a treasure? It seems Zero Wing really wants to go to war with Starlink. Fortunately for us, we can profit from this war. As long as we have enough stamina gemstones, exploring neutral maps won't be a problem. For a moment, the stamina gemstones' appearance caused an uproar in the Dark Knight Empire. The various adventurer teams, in particular, sent their members to Candlelight's shop in Dark Knight City to purchase a stock of the gemstones for their members. Other players might be afraid of being barred from the city's auction house, but adventurer teams like theirs weren't. After all, they could simply visit other auction houses. At most, they might have to visit another empire to shop. However, once they had the stamina gemstones, they would have an advantage over other powers when exploring neutral maps. They simply couldn't miss such a rare opportunity. The Dark Knight Empire's various large guilds secretly sent members to the Candlelight trading firm as well. This was just as much of an opportunity for them as it was for the various adventurer teams. Not even Starlink could dissuade them from purchasing stamina gemstones. If they disguised their members as independent players, Starlink would have a difficult time discovering their actions. Less than an hour after the public discovered the stamina gemstones, players crowded Candlelight's previous deserted shop in Dark Knight City. It was even more crowded than the city's auction house right now. Moreover, the prices for the Empire's specialty materials in Dark Knight City had doubled within the past hour due to Candlelight's auction requirements. Even so, none of the various large guilds or adventurer teams harbored any thought of taking advantage of this opportunity to sell their materials for a quick profit. For a time, chaos reigned over Dark Knight City's market. Eventually, the various superpowers' upper echelons, who were preoccupied with exploring neutral maps, received news of Zero Wing stamina gemstones. Chapter 2109. Changes in the Dark Knight Empire. Star Moon Kingdom, an advanced bar in White River City's business district. All 3 floors of the bar had been rented out, but aside from NPCs, the first 2 floors were void of people. Players only occupied the top floor VIP room. The several players in the room were all level 65 or above, and wore top-tier level 60 equipment. The leader was an elderly man in blue, who stared through a window, admiring the prosperous view. Suddenly, a level 64, black-clad assassin entered the room, looked at the elder, and said, "Elder E, we've just received news stating that Candlelight has started selling a large quantity of exotic stamina potions in the Dark Knight Empire. The trading firm has also begun to sell something called the Stamina Gemstone. Each Stamina Gemstone can increase players' stamina recovery rate by 7%. Candlelight is only accepting the Dark Knight Empire's specialty materials as payment, which has not only doubled the prices for these materials, but the various powers have also stopped selling any they have in stock." Stamina Gemstone? The blue-clad elder was astonished when he heard this. "How many are they selling?" "Based our investigations, Candlelight has prepared 60 stamina gemstones to sell in Dark Knight City," the assassin answered. 60? How generous! The elder expressed his surprise at the assassin's answer. Has Zero Wing gone insane? Players who frequented neutral maps understood how valuable items like the stamina gemstones were. Moreover, the more stamina gemstones one had equipped, the more valuable they would become. With 60 stamina gemstones, one could outfit a 20-man team that would then be able to operate in a neutral map without having to return to a city to recover stamina. The profits one could gain from such a team would be frightening, especially when exploring a new neutral map. If Zero Wing organized such a team, it would gain a tremendous advantage over its competition. Yet, Zero Wing willing sold the stamina gemstones, sacrificing such a wondrous opportunity. Only a lunatic would pull a stunt like this. It seems we still underestimate Zero Wing. Starlink will have a hard time preventing the guild from affecting its economy. Prepare the necessary materials immediately. We're heading to Dark Knight City, the blue-clad elder commanded as he stood from his seat. He, like everyone else in God's domain, had thought Zero Wing was simply making a fool of itself by challenging Starlink in the Dark Knight Empire, but now, it seemed that everyone had underestimated the guild's determination and strength. Likely no one had thought that Zero Wing was willing and able to make such a move. The Dark Knight Empire's various major powers had taken a step back in respect of Starlink, but now that their future was on the line, no one would heed Starlink's warnings. With how tempting the stamina gemstones were, the prices of the Empire's specialty materials would rise astronomically. Unlike the usual rare materials, specialty materials were unique to a specific country. Starlink used the Dark Knight Empire's specialty materials as the Starlink Trading Fins Foundation in the competition with other kingdoms and empires' trading firms. If the prices of the Dark Knight Empire's specialty materials reached absurd heights or supply were severed, Starlink's profits would plummet. After all, the various superpowers relied on their trading firms and wide connections as their main sources of income, and for Starlink, these relied on the Empire's specialty materials as a foundation. Without this foundation, Starlink would struggle to make money through its trading firm. Meanwhile, a deathly silence reigned in the guild leader's office, which Lu Xinglua occupied, in Starlink's Dark Knight City residence. None of the guild upper echelons present in the room dared to utter a single word. In a short hour, Starlink had gone from able to purchase more than 10,000 specialty materials to only several hundred. Moreover, this number continued to fall as time passed. Not only had this situation severely impacted Starlink's ability to produce specialty merchandise, but it had also drastically increased production costs. Ultimately, Starlink had three main income sources for coins. The first source was the guild's trading firm. The second was its money farming teams and the guild members completing guild quests. The third source came from the guild's towns. Although Starlink now had NPC auction houses as a fourth source of income, it had just taken these auction houses over. It would still be some time before the guild earned a significant amount of profits from this source. A minor income decrease due to Zero Wing's interference would have been tolerable, but its impact wasn't minor at all. At this point, the Starlink trading firm generated 20% less profit than usual, and that percentage continued to increase. This predicament would severely impact the guild's development. To make matters worse, this was happening as Starlink needed to migrate its guild towns to new locations. Relocating a guild town required a lot of funding, and a profit loss meant Starlink would have to delay the move. Zero Wing. Lu Xinglua's expression twisted into something gloomy as he read the report in his hands. He then turned toward Dawn Webb and growled, "Notify our subordinates to increase the purchase price for Star Moon Kingdom specialty materials immediately." "How much shall we raise it by, guild leader?" Dawn Webb asked. "Raise it by 50%. I want to see which of us will last the longest." Lu Xinglua said. "What about the stamina gemstones?" Dawn Webb asked. "If the other powers get their hands on them, they'll have a much easier time exploring the neutral maps around the Dark Knight Empire. We don't have many materials left. Let those powers have them. In any case, the Candlelight trading firm only has 60 stamina gemstones for sale. Even if a power purchases all 60, it'll only have enough to equip a 20-man team. That won't be enough to upset the Empire's power structure," Lu Xinglua said disdainfully. "Besides, how long can Zero Wing possibly afford to play around in Dark Knight City? Turn your focus to Star Moon Kingdom. Now that Zero Wing has lost the secret Chamber of Commerce's connections, it can only strut about its own kingdom." More than 10 neutral maps neighbored the Dark Knight Empire that were suitable for current players. No matter how powerful a 20-man team was, it could only explore one neutral map at most. The team wouldn't have the time to explore other neutral maps, let alone affect Starlink's exploration teams. In contrast, as Starlink raised the prices for Star Moon Kingdom specialty products, Zero Wing's operation costs would rise, and its profit margins would suffer. Even if Zero Wing had White River City's auction house, its development would stagnate. As the various major powers continued to develop in neutral maps, stagnation would eventually eliminate Zero Wing from God's domain altogether. "Understood." Dawn Webb nodded. Meanwhile, the candlelight trading firm's shop in Dark Knight City was lively as practically every power in the Empire gathered to view its products. Even representatives from other kingdoms and empires' powers had come to inspect the goods. Every player in the shop had traded 1 gold of specialty materials to qualify for the Stamina Gemstone's upcoming auction. None of them cared about Starlink's threat. Unless Starlink wanted Dark Knight City's auction house to go out of business, it wouldn't dare follow through and ban everyone that did business with Candlelight. Everyone, the Stamina Gemstones will be sold in sets of 3. The bids will start at 300 gold of specialty materials. Each increment must no less than 10 gold. If everyone is in agreement, let the auction begin. Everyone in the first floor hall grew restless with Yolan's announcement. 400 gold. 450 gold. 600 gold. One major power after another yelled out astronomical bids, but at the end of the day, none of them could outcompete the superpowers that secretly participated in the auction. The first set of Stamina Gemstones sold for 1,250 gold, causing many of the participating guilds and adventurer teams to sigh with disappointment. With that kind of money, they could fully equip a player in top-tier equipment. However, none of these players found the price unreasonable. 3 Stamina Gemstones could enable an expert to roam neutral maps freely. If a superpower's peak experts had this freedom, they could easily earn back the cost of the Stamina Gemstones through the opportunities they found. It was definitely a worthwhile trade. If the bidding currency hadn't been limited to specialty materials, the price would have likely gone higher. The various superpowers continued to win Stamina Gemstones in the auction. In the end, the 20 sets had netted nearly 27,000 gold in specialty materials for Zero Wing, which had even surpassed Xueqi's expectations. Zero Wing has earned quite a stock of materials through this auction, but it's a pity that its success ends here. Mu Cheng, who wore a black cloak amidst the crowd, was a little disappointed to see the Stamina Gemstones out of stock. While Zero Wing had indeed affected Starlink's operations by selling the Stamina Gemstones, the plan wasn't viable long-term. Once the auction ended, Dark Knight City would return to normal, while Zero Wing had only gained specialty materials. Naturally, Mu Cheng wasn't the only one with such thoughts. All of the various superpowers thought the same. However, just as the crowd was about to leave, Melancholic Smile walked into the center of the hall. The Master Forger's insignia she wore and her majestic aura attracted many of the players' attention. Even the various superpowers only had a handful of lifestyle masters, much less Master Forgers. Today's auction for the Stamina Gemstones has come to an end. The next auction will take place tomorrow at the same time. Customers who failed to win gemstones today may visit us then. Melancholic Smile announced. Any members of the candlelight trading firm that spend more than 3 gold in the city's shop will be eligible for a lucky draw on the day of their transaction. We will select one winner every 4 hours who will be able to purchase 1 Stamina Gemstone for 200 gold. As Melancholic Smile finished speaking, silence descended on the hall. After a brief moment, many players spoke up. Is this a joke? Zero Wing has more Stamina Gemstones. Even the various superpowers stared at Melancholic Smile in shock, not to mention the many independent players. How is this possible? Eldery muttered, surprise coloring his tranquil features. Selling 60 Stamina Gemstones was already amazing, yet by the looks of it, Zero Wing intended to continue selling the gemstones for a considerable period. Although he did not know how long Zero Wing could maintain this business, every additional day would affect Dark Knight City. Moreover, the impact the city felt would grow stronger with each day. Every auction was the equivalent of another 20-man team that could explore neutral maps without concern for their stamina. If Zero Wing maintained these auctions for 5 or 6 days, it would likely change the power structure in the Empire's neighboring neutral maps. If that happened, the Dark Knight Empire would likely find a new ruler. Chapter 21:10. Situation changes. News that the candlelight trading firm would sell Stamina Gemstones long-term spread throughout the Dark Knight Empire like wildfire. Small guilds and adventurer teams that hadn't expressed any hope of obtaining Stamina Gemstones began to grow restless. Candlelight is selling Stamina Gemstones long-term. This is interesting. Our chance to grow stronger has finally come. Although the 60 Stamina Gemstones had been tempting, it simply wasn't enough to go around. There were already 3 superpowers in the Dark Knight Empire, not to mention first-rate guilds and top adventurer teams. There were also hidden dark forces. Small guilds and low-ranked adventurer teams had no chance of securing stamina gemstones, and even if they won a bid, what could they possibly accomplish with only 3 gemstones? However, Candlelight's recent revelation had changed the situation. If the Candlelight trading firm truly sold stamina gemstones long-term, they'd have a chance to purchase a good number for themselves. Candlelight was only accepting the Dark Knight Empire's specialty materials as currency, and even if the various superpowers had a large stock of these materials, there was a limit. As long as these minor powers saved their materials for some time, they could definitely win 1 or 2 bids every now and then. Once they had enough gemstones, they could make full use of them in neutral maps. For a time, the Dark Knight Empire's various powers ordered their members to collect as many specialty materials as possible, prohibiting the item sales. They'd benefit more from spending the specialty materials on the stamina gemstones and exploring neutral maps than they would by selling them. Furthermore, other powers would overtake their progress if they didn't secure stamina gemstones early on. Meanwhile, due to the Candlelight trading firm's removal from the secret Chamber of Commerce, all previous agreements between the two had become null and void. As a result, the Chamber began to withdraw the manpower and items it had assigned to Zero Wing City in Star Moon Kingdom. While Yuan Tianxin arranged for his subordinates' move out of their office, a heroic woman in gorgeous sacred armor approached him. She drew everyone's gaze as she entered the office, mesmerizing many of the men. As expected of Goddess Purple Jade, she's already level 66. She can likely rank among the top 20 on any Empire's ranking list. I've heard that 2 days ago, her team completed an epic team quest and slew a level 60 mythic ranked Iron Blood Dragon, obtaining the Dragon Blood Sword. That sword is so awesome. It's even considered as one of the top 10 epic weapons in God's domain. Because of that sword, Purple Jade is now stronger than other peak experts, earning the position as one of God's domain's 10 great swordsmen from the secret pavilion. As players spoke about the 10 great swordsmen, their admiration overwhelmed them. The 10 great swordsmen was a list the secret pavilion had introduced to promote each class's experts. All classes in God's domain were unique, and some were even the polar opposite of others, so battles between different classes couldn't accurately determine the stronger expert. Hence, the secret pavilion had introduced new ranking lists for each of the 12 main classes. Each of the lists had only 10 players, and they were judged solely based on their strength. Combat standards and battle records didn't matter. In addition, the aim of these 12-class list was to give the younger generation an opportunity to shine, so only players 30 years old or younger could qualify for the ranking lists. Of course, this age limit also allowed the secret pavilion to avoid touching upon the various superpowers' foundations. The various superpowers treated their old monsters as core secrets, and if the secret pavilion revealed these secrets to the public, the superpowers would band together against the organization. When Purple Jade had obtained the Dragonblood Sword, not only had it earned her a position on the swordsman's list, but she had also secured the 8th rank. Uncle Yuan, we've just received a message from the higher-ups. They'd like us to buy some stamina gemstones from Zero Wing. The more, the better, Purple Jade said, smiling as she walked up to Yuan Tianxin. They're so shameless. We just banished Zero Wing from the secret Chamber of Commerce, yet they want me to negotiate with the guild? Why don't they speak with Zero Wing themselves? Yuan Tianxin could not help his growing anger when he heard the relayed message. The so-called higher-ups Purple Jade referred to were the secret Chamber of Commerce's advanced members. The secret pavilion had warned them not to casually annex the chamber's members, particularly Zero Wing due to the immense potential it had shown lately. However, the other 5 advanced members had ignored the secret pavilion's warning and abandoned Zero Wing. Now that they wanted him to place Peacemaker. But Zero Wing is pretty amazing. It has revealed something as valuable as the stamina gemstones, and the 5 powers regret their actions. I've heard that they are busy exploring the recently discovered Brute God's land and urgently need items that can increase players' maximum stamina or recover rate, Purple Jade said, giggling. They're panicking now. They threw away their chance to purchase stamina gemstones just to show respect to Starlink and suppress Zero Wing. Now, they are all upset with Starlink. However, Starlink has gotten serious this time. Not only has it increased the prices of Star Moon Kingdom specialty materials, but it has also begun to sell similar merchandise to Candlelights at lower prices. Many players have already started shopping at the Starlink trading firm. No one is buying the Candlelight's common products. I'm afraid Candlelight has lost 2/3 of its usual profits, Yuan Tiexin said. To make matters worse, the Or Empire's powers have been eyeing Zero Wing's territory. In comparison, Starlink only has to worry about Zero Wing's stamina gemstones. Although the stamina gemstones are valuable, Starlink isn't a superpower for no reason. With 3 NPC auction houses and the Starlink Corporation's support, its financial prowess isn't so easy to shake. Moreover, Starlink has control of a fortress in the ancient undead country, the Dark Knight Empire's most important neutral map. It is simply too difficult for Zero Wing to impact Starlink's finances negatively. The ancient undead country was a new expansion pack that had triggered in the Dark Knight Empire, and Starlink was responsible for triggering it. The ancient undead country had once been a massive empire, but due to an ancient war, it had fallen into ruin. It was no exaggeration to say that the ancient undead country was even richer than the Or Empire in resources. Moreover, it housed the only known God Mode regional dungeon among the dozen or so neighboring kingdoms and empires. Because of the power Starlink held in the ancient undead country, even the various superguilds feared the superpower and had to pay it proper respect. God's Domain superguilds didn't just fear Starlink due to the Starlink Corporation's backing, and if that were the only strength the guild had, the Secret Chamber of Commerce's advanced members wouldn't have allowed Starlink to join their ranks. Zero Wing is fully capable of returning to the Secret Chamber of Commerce with its stamina gemstones. The 5 other powers wouldn't object. If Zero Wing regains access to our sales channels, it could certainly afford to continue its fight with Starlink while growing even stronger, Purple Jade said, nodding. She, too, understood how powerful Starlink was, and the fact that Zero Wing had made the superpower suffer as much as it had already was impressive. Indeed. Yuan Tiexin agreed with the young woman. Starlink would struggle to suppress Zero Wing financially if the smaller guild returned to the Secret Chamber of Commerce. Following which, Yuan Tiexin contacted Xueqi to report the good news. Chapter 2111. Condition. White River City, Candlelight Trading Firm. Due to Starlink's all-out economic suppression, the previously crowded shop had calmed. Its current customers were only here to purchase Candlelight's specialty products. None of them showed any interest in the trading firm's common items. The Candlelight Trading Firm even saw a drop in the number of lifestyle applicants. Now, only a dozen or so players lined up to take the application test. The players that passed the shop sighed at its decline. The Candlelight Trading Firm shop was the most eye-catching building in the business district, aside from NPC-owned buildings. The shop loomed like a giant, overlooking White River City. Why wouldn't they be surprised to see the shop practically deserted? In comparison, a 3-story shop not far from Candlelight boomed with business. Practically every player in the business district rushed toward the shop. Starlink really is ruthless. Not only has it set up shop in every NPC city that the Candlelight Trading Firm occupies, but it's also selling common goods at half the normal rate. It is basically selling items at cost. Purple Jade was astonished when she saw how popular the Starlink Trading Firm had become. Starlink was throwing away enough money to give an ordinary superpower a heart attack. Not even the secret pavilion would casually sacrifice so much income. However, Purple Jade had to admit that Starlink's strategy was effective, practically stealing all of the Candlelight Trading Firm's customers. Not only had Candlelight sales plummeted, but its lifestyle players' income had suffered as well. Including Starlink's mass recruitment for skilled lifestyle players, many of Candlelight's intermediate and advanced lifestyle players had jumped ship. If this persisted, it would destroy the Candlelight Trading Firm, and Zero Wing would stagnate due to the lost profits. Zero Wing was no longer a small guild. It had become a gigantic existence. Even if the guild avoided massive operations, it still needed to spend an astronomical amount of money each day. The guild might maintain its lead over its competition for a while, but if Zero Wing's development ground to a halt, it would only be a matter of time before it was overtaken by the other powers. Furthermore, multiple hostile superpowers still searched for a chance to tear the guild apart. These factors were a large part of the reason that Starlink had invested so much into targeting the Candlelight Trading Firm's business. Otherwise, it never would have paid such a painfully high price. This situation is why we are here. If this weren't happening, we wouldn't have any leverage to negotiate with Zero Wing, Yuan Tiexin said seriously. All right, let's hurry inside. Yuan Tiexin then entered the Candlelight Trading Firm, while Purple Jade followed behind him after taking one last look at Starlink's shop. The moment these two players entered the shop, the various reconnaissance players from Star Moon Kingdom's various powers focused on the pair. Why are the secret pavilions Yuan Tianxin and Purple Jade visiting the Candlelight trading firm? Didn't the secret Chamber of Commerce already expel Candlelight? Why are these two here? Does Secret intend to re-invite Candlelight? The various powers players quietly discussed their guesses as they watched Liang Jing lead the pair to the second floor. News of the Candlelight trading firm's exile from the secret Chamber of Commerce had spread throughout Star Moon Kingdom. It was precisely the reason that Starlink suppression against Zero Wing was so effective. Meanwhile, Yuan Tianxin and Purple Jade were some of the secret pavilion's VIPs. These two shouldn't have any reason to visit Candlelight now that it wasn't a member of the secret Chamber of Commerce. The only plausible explanation involved the stamina gemstones Zero Wing sold in the Dark Knight Empire. The stamina gemstones' importance to the various powers went without saying, especially to superpowers. However, only Zero Wing currently had access to their source. The secret Chamber of Commerce would find it difficult to convince Zero Wing to share these gemstones unless it offered a token of its sincerity. The best expression it could offer required reinstating the Candlelight trading firm's membership in the secret Chamber of Commerce and offering additional remunerations. T's reconnaissance members immediately reported the situation to their superiors, and very quickly, news of Yuan Tianxin and Purple Jade's visit reached the kingdom's various powers. Things are going to get interesting, Commander. Starlink has gone through great lengths to kick Zero Wing out of secret, yet Zero Wing's stamina gemstones are about to ruin its plans. Ilua Fei, who read her subordinate's latest report in FFF Adventurer Team's residence in the distant Black Dragon Empire, said. Smiling, she continued, when Starlink's upper echelons learn of this, they'll die from anger. That depends on whether or not Zero Wing wants to rejoin the secret Chamber of Commerce. Yan Tianqing responded absently as he polished his short sword. Why wouldn't it? Ilua Fei asked strangely. Zero Wing can resolve the issues it faces in Star Moon Kingdom immediately by rejoining Secret. Although Starlink's efforts will still affect its business to a certain extent in Star Moon Kingdom, it'll be tolerable. Why wouldn't Zero Wing want to rejoin Secret? Will Black Flame really abandon his guild's development because of the minor humiliation? Any other guild would definitely accept Secret's attempts to reconcile, but Zero Wing has always been overbearing. There's a high chance that the guild will refuse the offer, Yan Tianqing said. This is also Zero Wing's flaw. If Zero Wing can fix that, it has a high chance of becoming a superpower in the future. That can't be possible, can it, Commander? Would Zero Wing really sacrifice such a vibrant future? Ilua Fei asked, surprised. It's highly possible. After all, Zero Wing has always operated in such a way, Yan Tianqing said, sighing. I used to be like that too, and as a result, I missed that final step. Hopefully, Zero Wing will make the right decision. Star Moon Kingdom's various superpowers were eager to hear Zero Wing's final decision, but unlike Yan Tianqing, most of them assumed that Zero Wing would jump at the chance to rejoin the secret Chamber of Commerce. It was, after all, the only way that Zero Wing could recover from its current predicament. While the various powers secretly discussed the matter, Yuan Tianxin and Purple Jade waited in Candlelight Trading Firm's VIP reception room in silence, watching Xueqi. Guild leader Black Flame, the secret pavilion will reinforce Zero Wing's permanent membership in the secret Chamber of Commerce. From now on, not even advanced members will have the authority to expel your guild. In addition, if Zero Wing agrees to sell a large number of stamina gemstones, several of the Chamber's advanced members will offer 10 additional sales channels in their own headquarters. With this, not even Starlink will achieve much by targeting Zero Wing financially, Yuan Tianxin said. May I know your thoughts on this offer, guild leader? Even Yuan Tianxin found the higher-ups' conditions surprising. The 10 additional sales channels were an extraordinary offer, all of which came through the shops in Empire's imperial capitals. These sales channels were far more valuable than those the Chamber's basic members had access to. With them, the Candlelight trading firm's profits would rise to a whole new level. Your conditions are quite tempting, Xueqi said, nodding slightly as he read the contract Yuan Tianxin had handed him. However, they're not enough. Yuan Tianxin found Xueqi's reply understandable. After all, the man should be enraged over Candlelight's removal from the secret Chamber of Commerce. Softly, Yuan Tianxin asked, what conditions do you have in mind then? I only have one condition. Looking straight at Yuan Tianxin, Xueqi chuckled and said, I want advanced membership in the Secret Chamber of Commerce. Chapter 21:12. God Mode Regional Dungeon. When Xueqi stated his condition, everything in the VIP reception room seemed to freeze. Both Yuan Tixin and Liang Jing, who stood behind Xueqi, stared at the swordsman incredulously. Most of the guilds in God's domain recognized the Secret Chamber of Commerce for the extraordinary existence it was, and those who could become members were either superpowers or powers with immensely powerful backgrounds. However, only those that had truly joined the Secret Chamber of Commerce would understand how frightening the chamber was. Only a few of God's domain's powers could match the reach of Secret's influence. The Secret Chamber of Commerce ranked at the very top in the game in both its ability to sell merchandise and its ability to collect materials. This was why the majority of God's domain's superpowers dreamed of joining Secret. When Liang Jing had taken over the candlelight trading firm's business, she had learned how frightening Secret was. She was not a pure gamer like Xueqi, but she had managed a company before, so she knew business and economics far better than most of God's domain's players. She already found it astonishing that Zero Wing had become a member of the Secret Chamber of Commerce. She hadn't expected such exceptional results from Xueqi. But now, the man demanded status as one of Secret's advanced members. She had no idea what to say about this. His demand was beyond daylight robbery. Guild leader Black Flame, this condition is simply impossible. Do you know what price the Secret Chamber of Commerce's advanced members had to pay to get to their position? Contrary to expectations, Yuan Tixin wasn't angry about Xueqi's condition. Instead, he calmly said, I can tell you now that even with over tens of thousands of stamina gemstones and all of Zero Wing City, you still wouldn't qualify to become an advanced member. Even super guilds coveted the Secret Chamber of Commerce's advanced membership, but the number of super guilds that actually became advanced members could be counted on one hand. If Starlink hadn't handed over an astronomical amount of resources and advanced members' status in the Secret Chamber of Commerce was extraordinary. Not only did they have access to more sales channels, but they also had some control of the chamber itself and received 5% of the chamber's profits. While 5% might not seem like much, it was enough to rival 50% of an ordinary superpower's income with the scale of Secret's operations. In other words, by becoming an advanced member in the Secret Chamber of Commerce, one would gain half of an ordinary superpower's resources. Claiming that one could become a titan in God's domain by becoming an advanced member was no exaggeration. How could a few stamina gemstones possibly rival such benefits? Stamina gemstones might be a significant boon to players in neutral maps right now, but as players leveled up, they'd acquire better items. Naturally, players would find more items that increased maximum stamina and stamina recovery. They wouldn't have to worry about lacking stamina items in the future. Furthermore, stamina gemstones were very scarce right now. Zero Wing didn't have enough to affect the big picture. At most, it had enough for the various powers to gain a slight advantage when exploring neutral maps. Elder Yuan, I know the value of advanced membership, Xueqi said, smiling. Naturally, I have my reasons for stating this condition. I'm not just spouting empty word. Oh. What is guild leader Black Flame willing to offer then? Yuan Tixin could not help his growing curiosity. Yuan Tixin, more or less, understood Xueqi's personality. The man wasn't some ignorant fool. He was a domain realm expert, and if he dared to say such a thing, he had the confidence to back it up. However, Yuan Tixin also found it very difficult to imagine what Zero Wing could possibly offer to convince the secret pavilion that Zero Wing should become an advanced member. I'll hand over 40% of Stone Forest Town's shares, Xueqi declared. Stone Forest Town? Yuan Tixin was stupefied by Xueqi's answer. For a moment, he even wondered if he had heard wrong. Guild leader Black Flame, are you talking about the Stone Forest Town in the Stoneclaw Mountains? That's right. I'm talking about that Stone Forest Town. Xueqi nodded. Guild leader Black Flame, if you are not interested in this transaction, I won't force you to agree to it. If there is nothing else to discuss, we'll be taking our leave, Yuan Tixin said as he inwardly rolled his eyes at Xueqi. He was sure that Xueqi was toying with him. Not even 2 Zero Wing cities would be enough to buy an advanced membership in the Secret Chamber of Commerce, let alone an advanced town like Stone Forest Town. Moreover, Xueqi only offered 40% of the town's shares. Even Liang Jing felt that Shifeng had gone overboard with his latest joke. Stone Forest Town was indeed an excellent advanced town, but the map it occupied was no longer suitable for players to level up. Stone Forest Town wasn't even worth as much as Silverwing Town, much less Zero Wing City. What if I tell you that I can move Stone Forest Town to the ancient undead country's bottomless abyss? Shifeng unhurriedly mentioned as he watched Yuan Tiexian stand from his seat and turn to leave. What? Yuan Tiexian was stunned. He spun around and demanded, "Are you telling the truth?" As far as the secret pavilion knew, the ancient undead country's bottomless abyss was the only God mode regional dungeon in God's domain. The bottomless abyss was a level 60 to level 100 super large-scale regional dungeon, and not only did it have far more resources than Azura mode regional dungeons, but the dungeon's monsters also dropped 7 luminaries crystals. Unfortunately, the ancient undead country's environment was exceptionally harsh. Players would have an extremely difficult time surviving inside the dungeon. In fact, entering and leaving the dungeon was immensely troublesome, not to mention exploring it. A large part of the reason that the Secret Chamber of Commerce had agreed to promote Starlink to advanced membership was the guild's willingness to hand over the fortress it had obtained in the ancient undead country. Otherwise, Starlink would have needed to offer a lot more to elevate its membership. Yuan Tiexian could not fathom how Shifeng could move Stone Forest Town to the bottomless abyss. Setting up a guild town in a neutral map was already incredibly difficult, not to mention setting one up in a God mode regional dungeon. However, if what Shifeng said were true, the bottomless abyss would become one of Zero Wing's backyards. Exploring the regional dungeon would become at least half as difficult, and players wouldn't need to worry about their survival in the bottomless abyss. Of course. Shifeng nodded. The idea would be delusional at best for others, but for Shifeng, the task was only somewhat difficult, not entirely out of the question. To complete the task, Zero Wing would need a large stock of resources, enough that not even top-ranked first-rate guilds would be able to afford it. Originally, Shifeng had planned on setting up Stone Forest Town in a neutral map outside of Starmoon Kingdom. But now that the ancient undead country had been discovered, he dismissed his initial plans. God mode regional dungeons were treasure troves, and even the various superpowers would fight for control of the areas. Since someone had discovered the ancient undead country now, and the secret pavilion had come knocking on his door, Shifeng wouldn't ignore this opportunity. Even so, that's not enough. It's only a town in a regional dungeon, Yuan Tiexian said, but looking at Shifeng's confident expression, he couldn't help but return to his seat. This is the most sincere offer I can make. If it isn't possible, then I can only apologize for the inconvenience, Shifeng said, chuckling at the interest flashing in Yuan Tiexian's eyes. I am absolutely certain that the higher-ups will not agree. You'd be better off requesting another condition. Yuan Tiexian responded with conviction. After giving the matter some thought, Shifeng said, "Since that is the case, then I want Starlink's advanced membership revoked." Chapter 21:13. Giving Starlink a taste of its own medicine. Revoke Starlink's advanced membership? Yuan Tiexian was stunned by Shifeng's new condition. Purple Jade, who sat beside Yuan Tiexian, gaped at Shifeng in shock. She had never thought that this man would make such a demand. Instead of securing more benefits for Zero Wing, Shifeng wanted Secret to revoke Starlink's advanced membership. He was simply insane. Guild leader Black Flame, whether or not the higher-ups agree, do you understand the consequences for doing something like that? Yuan Tiexian asked after taking in a deep breath. Starlink has paid a massive price for its advanced membership. If it finds out that it lost it due to Zero Wing, it won't rest until your guild had been destroyed. Elder Yuan, I am only doing what Starlink has done to Zero Wing. If Starlink wants to face Zero Wing in an all-out fight, we welcome it, Shifeng said, unperturbed. Within Starmoon Kingdom, Zero Wing wouldn't fear Starlink even if the guild launched a full military assault. On an open battlefield, the Guardian Puppets and Hell Tanks were invincible against Tier 2 players, and even if Zero Wing were no match for Starlink in guerrilla warfare, Zero Wing had the home ground advantage. Zero Wing already occupied most of the valuable leveling maps in the kingdom, and if the war dragged on, it would only be in Zero Wing's favor. In fact, Zero Wing would rather face an assault than deal with these financial attacks. Zero Wing's development already required significant funding and resources, and now, it had to split a portion of its assets to fight Starlink. If this persisted, It was easy to imagine what outcome awaited Zero Wing. But advanced membership in the secret Chamber of Commerce was extraordinary. The 5% of the Chamber's revenue alone was enough to sustain Starlink in this financial war. If Starlink lost its status, however, not only would the guild's finances suffer, but the suppression Zero Wing faced would also lighten. All right, but I cannot make this decision alone. I still have to report to the higher-ups. Naturally, I cannot guarantee what they will decide, Yuan Tiexin said, sighing as he looked at Shifeng's fearless expression. Of course. Shifeng nodded. Kicking a basic member out of the secret Chamber of Commerce was already extremely difficult. Trying to demote an advanced member was even more challenging. At the end of the day, however, it was up to the secret pavilion. All members, both basic and advanced, only exchanged 1% of their shares with the secret Chamber of Commerce. Advanced members merely received better benefits than basic members. Moreover, the contracts all powers signed with Secret were one-sided. The secret pavilion could dismiss any member on a whim, including advanced members. However, the secret pavilion would not casually dismiss or demote advanced members as they brought in far more profits than basic members. The secret pavilion had only agreed to remove Zero Wing from the chamber because Starlink had paid a large enough price. Now that Zero Wing wanted Starlink demoted, it had to pay an equally high price. Yuan Tiexin walked over to a corner of the room and contacted the secret Chamber of Commerce's higher-ups. After about half an hour of discussion, he returned to his seat before Shifeng. Based on his stern expression, he had received an answer. Guild leader Black Flame, the higher-ups have made their decision, but before I relay it, I need to ask. Are you certain that you can establish Stone Forest Town in the bottomless abyss? Yuan Tiexin asked seriously. I cannot guarantee it, Shifeng said, chuckling. Do you understand what our advanced membership represents, Guild leader Black Flame? If you cannot offer us a guarantee, we cannot continue this transaction. Yuan Tiexin explained with a twisted expression. Don't be in such a rush, Elder Yuan. Although I cannot guarantee success, I can sign a contract regarding it, Shifeng said as he retrieved an empty contract. He then said, I can offer two options. If the secret Chamber of Commerce is willing to revoke Starlink's advanced membership immediately, the chamber will gain 30% of Stone Forest Town's shares after its establishment in the bottomless abyss. I will also accept Starlink's demotion after Stone Forest Town has been moved. However, that option is only worth 20% of the town's shares. I thought you had offered 40% earlier, Black Flame? Have you changed your mind so quickly? Yuan Tiexin's eyebrows twitched slightly. That was the price Zero Wing was willing to offer for advanced membership. Since we are only discussing Starlink's demotion, the price must change, Shifeng said, smiling. Do you know how much Starlink had to hand over of its fortress's shares in the ancient undead country to become an advanced member? Yuan Tiexin had the urge to vomit blood when he heard Shifeng's reply. 70%. Starlink paid approximately 70% of the fortress's shares to become an advanced member, Guild leader Black Flame. On the other hand, you are only offering shares for an advanced town. Don't you think your offer is a little too weak? You also have to consider the location, Shifeng calmly replied, not budging at the slightest. The difference between a town within a regional dungeon and one without was massive, not to mention a god mode regional dungeon. He refused to believe that the secret pavilion didn't know this difference. Shifeng would never have considered selling Stone Forest Town shares if not for his goal to drag Starlink down and regain access to the secret Chamber of Commerce's sales channels. Once he moved Stone Forest Town to the bottomless abyss, he could gain a fortune in entrance fees alone. Although I see your reasoning, it isn't enough shares. If you're willing to increase your offer by another 20%, we can continue these negotiations. The higher-ups will not agree otherwise, Yuan Tiexin said. This is the highest Zero Wing is willing to go. If you cannot accept that, then I'm afraid that there is nothing we can do, Shifeng, shaking his head. Shifeng had considered using the secret of linking NPC auction houses with player auction houses as a bargaining chip, but he couldn't afford to expose this information just yet. Every day he could maintain its secrecy was another day of advantages. In any case, he had control of Stone Forest Town's auction house, and only he could see how many people truly sold items through it. At most, players would be surprised by how many items passed through the auction house. This, Shifeng's uninterested expression rendered Yuan Tiexin speechless. It was as if the man didn't mind this deal going sour. If the higher-ups hadn't been so tempted by the bottomless abyss and the idea of a guild town within the regional dungeon, including how much said town could help the secret pavilion's development, he would have already left the room. Agree to his deal. We will revoke Starlink's advanced membership immediately. Suddenly, Yuan Tiexin heard a solemn voice. Guild leader. Yuan Tiexin's eyes drifted to the dignified man on the screen at the bottom right corner of his vision. This transaction was immensely important to the secret pavilion, so he had deliberately maintained the video call with his guild leader, allowing the man to listen in on the conversation. The loss is manageable, and I've seen Stone Forest Town before. It has developed quite smoothly thus far and has already become an advanced town. If Zero Wing can truly re-establish the town in the bottomless abyss, it will only be a matter of time before Stone Forest Town becomes a basic city. However, we need a clear time frame. If Zero Wing cannot accomplish the task within a reasonable time, it will have to compensate for our losses with the combat puppet design. The dignified man said. Yes, I understand. Yuan Tiexin replied as realization dawned on him. A basic city was far more valuable than a fortress. He hadn't really thought Xueqi's offer through. Following which, he turned to the swordsman in question and said, Guild leader Black Flame, we agree to your first condition. However, you must give us a time limit. If you cannot fulfill your promise within the given time, you will have to offer the combat puppet design as compensation. This is the most the secret pavilion is willing to concede. All of the various superpowers sought their own combat puppets, which were easily as valuable as an entire fortress in the ancient undead country. That won't be a problem. Although Yuan Tiexin's reply surprised Xueqi, he quickly answered the man, as for the time limit, I think 10 days should be appropriate. All right, let's sign the contract then. Yuan Tiexin nodded. Both Liang Jing and Purple Jade watched the exchange in shock. With just a few words, Xueqi had guaranteed Starlink's demotion. No one would believe this if they heard it. Once Xueqi and Yuan Tiexin signed the contract, the Secret Chamber of Commerce had revoked Starlink's advanced membership within less than half an hour. Although this matter had only been announced internally, news quickly spread across God's domain. Chapter 21:14 Overturning the Heavens. Foggy Ghost Plains, a neutral map outside of the Black Dragon Empire. Darkness enveloped the plains throughout the year. Level 70 to 80 undead creatures with high physical resistance roamed the plains, making the area very dangerous for current players. If players weren't careful here, they could easily lose their lives. Thus, very few visited this place. However, a 20-man team currently fought more than 100 level 70-plus undead earthworms. These undead earthworms ranked between Special Elite and Lord, and a deathly aura surrounded their bodies. If players approached, they felt a chill seep into them, affecting their movements. In addition, the undead earthworms had extremely high defense, and their attacks had a corrosive effect. However, the players who faced these undead earthworms defeated one after another. The team's leader, an assassin, toyed with roughly 80 undead earthworms by himself. Like a graceful butterfly, the assassin skillfully dodged the corrosive attacks. While the assassin attracted the undead earthworms' attacks, a willowy woman bombarded the monsters with one spell after another, each dealing over -20,000 damage. Moreover, the woman timed her spells accurately to strike the undead earthworms as they launched an attack, diverting the trajectories and reducing the pressure on the assassin. After around 30 minutes, the 20-man team finally slew the last of these monsters, their bodies littering the ground alongside materials and items. The commander and vice-commander sure are amazing. Without those two, these undead earthworms would have likely worn us down until we died. That's right. The stamina consumption here is ridiculous. I lost more than a quarter of my stamina in that fight alone. It's no wonder why the other adventurer teams refuse to grind here. I wish I were as capable as the commander and vice-commander. I'd be able to walk through the Black Dragon Empire unhindered. With their fame and strength, they could establish a large guild in the Empire. Even superpowers have tried to recruit our adventurer team. It's a pity that the commander rejected all those offers without hesitation. When the resting members' FFF adventurer team members looked at Yen Tianqing and Ilua Fei, their gazes held respect and admiration, especially the players that had recently joined the team. Not only did the undead earthworms have incredible defense, but their death aura also weakened players' combat power. Including the corrosive effect of the monster's attacks, not even MTs in top-tier equipment would dare to aggro too many at once. At most, a strong MT could handle 5 or 6 undead earthworms at a time. However, these monsters traveled in groups of 100 or more. Even a 50-man team would struggle against such a large band of monsters, not to mention a 20-man team. However, thanks to Yan Tianqing aggroing most of the worms and Iluafei's timely attacks, the team was able to defeat the 100-plus undead earthworms without much trouble. The only benefit to the foggy ghost plains was the high EXP its monsters granted. The leveling speed here was unmatched. After defeating a single wave of monsters, the FFF Adventurer Team's members had gained a visible chunk to their experience bars. It was a rare phenomenon at their levels. Suddenly, a woman in dark gray leather armor appeared before Yan Tianqing and Iluafei. She had a magnificent body, looking like a fairy, and her chilling aura felt like the moon in the night sky. Upon close inspection, one would discover that this woman was actually level 67. She could undoubtedly rank at the very top of the Black Dragon Empire's ranking list. Meanwhile, Yan Tianqing and Iluafei had failed to detect this woman's presence before she had appeared. The FFF members grew nervous due to her abrupt arrival. They were all experts, and their ability to sense others' auras was first-rate, yet they hadn't noticed this woman's approach. To make matters worse, they had never felt such a frightening aura before. They all felt as if they stood in a silent hell as this woman's aura washed over them. "Why are you here, Lotus?" Yan Tianqing calmly asked the peerless beauty before him. The other FFF members' jaws dropped when they heard the woman's name. Everyone in the Black Dragon Empire knew the name Lotus. It was, after all, the name of the #1 player on the Empire's assassin ranking list. She was a legend in the Empire, and even the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion feared her. Moreover, Lotus was particularly mysterious. The public knew almost nothing about her other than her name. The reason Lotus was known as a legend in the Black Dragon Empire and even the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion feared her so greatly was her success in killing Martial Dragon, one of the pavilion's monster-level experts. 9 Dragons Emperor had been furious about Martial Dragon's defeat, but despite ordering a hunt for Lotus, he had accomplished nothing. In the end, 9 Dragons Emperor had been forced to abandon the hunt. The FFF Adventurer Team's members had certainly never expected to meet the real deal here. Moreover, their commander seemed to know this woman. "Have you considered the matter?" Lotus asked in a cold, mechanical tone. "I've already told you that I'm not interested in joining Dark Soul," Yan Tianqing said. "The Alliance has more resources than you can imagine. I'm sure you believe that you can continue down this path and grow stronger without relying on a superpower. I thought the same in the past, but you haven't reached that point yet. You haven't experienced what it truly feels like to reach the point where there is no road ahead. If you continue to be stubborn, the gap between us will only grow. I know that you're interested in Zero Wing, and I admit that the guild is impressive to secure White River City's auction house despite facing multiple superpowers in the competition," Lotus said, her voice deepening. "However, everyone knows what future awaits Zero Wing. After provoking so many superpowers, it is destined to perish. Furthermore, Zero Wing has almost no training resources. You'd be better off joining me in Dark Soul. Dark Soul's resources will help you improve. Do you really need to waste time on a guild that is on the verge of destruction?" "I've made up my mind," Yan Tianqing replied without hesitation. "Zero Wing's death isn't certain yet. As long as it returns to the secret chamber of commerce, Starlink won't find the guild easy to eliminate." "So what if it returns? Do you really think a guild with no background and resources can overturn the heavens?" Lotus asked with a hint of disdain. But as soon as Lotus finished speaking, Iluafei gasped from beside Yan Tianqing. "Commander, something has happened," Iluafei shouted after reading the message from the Flower of Seven Sins. "What is it?" Yan Tianqing asked, giving his vice commander an odd look. "Starlink. Starlink's advanced membership has been revoked," Iluafei said, shuddering. She even wondered if this message was a fake, but since it bore the Flower of Seven Sins name, it couldn't be. How is that possible? Yan Tianqing was stunned. Has the secret pavilion lost its mind? What in the world has happened? Membership in the secret chamber of commerce was extraordinary. Revoking a basic member status demanded an extremely high price, not to mention a Powers Advanced membership. The news even surprised Lotus. Becoming an advanced member in secret required an astronomical price. By demoting one of its advanced members, the chamber would lose significant profits. Why would the secret chamber of commerce willingly revoke Starlink's advanced rank? The information isn't very accurate, but based on what we currently know, I'm 90% sure that Zero Wing has something to do with it. The moment Secret reinstated Zero Wing's basic membership, it demoted Starlink. Iluafe replied hesitantly.